Hello, we are on All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio streaming show. We are glad to have you on again this week. We have been going strong all year round, and we are very happy to have our end of the year show. Right, that we do a year in review. Every year, we look forward to what happened and what's going to happen in the future, and we have all of our friends on to just talk about what's going on, what happened in the past, what's happening in the future, and what's happening locally, politically, culturally. And this is a perfect start to that segment. We have Educator, Rafeeza Shahabudeen on, and we also have on author and educator Ester Lewars. And she's going to be talking about, they're both with the Newark Caribbean Commission. They're both Newark Caribbean commissioners, and they could tell us a little more about that. And also Ester Lewars, and I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Correct.
All right, and Ester Lewars, and she has written a book, and the book is called My Ultimate Self, How Death Becomes My Motivator, right?
How Death Became My Motivator.
How Death Became My Motivator. And we're going to be talking about both of those things coming up on this show. After this segment, and just to give people an idea of what we're doing after this, we have on, I'm sorry, just getting this together. We have on Myrna Morales is coming on at 6:20, and she's going to be talking about the role of libraries in shaping public consciousness and the Lolita Project that works toward how libraries can influence our perception of conflicts. She's specifically going to be talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and libraries. It's Dr. Myrna Morales. Dr. Myrna Morales is in library science, and she's organizing libraries inside of Boulder, Colorado, to address these concerns. So this is All Politics Are Local, and we're going to different places in the country that talk about different activist things that are going on. So we're glad we're going to have Myrna on this week from Boulder, Colorado. At 7 p.m., we have our year in review with many of our frequent guests. We have Dr. Kelly Harris, who's a senior director of Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. We have Keesha Eure, who's director of the Office of Anti-Violence. We have Monifa Bandele, who's the chief strategy officer at Moms Rising, among many other hats that she wears. We have Racquel Romans-Henry. She's a policy director for Salvation and Social Justice. So at 7 p.m., it's going to be a real activist conversation talking about different movements, different things that are going on, that went on this year, and what we expect from next year, which is probably going to be very volatile. But we'll get into that at 7 p.m. At 8 p.m., we have a conversation about Kwanzaa and how to reconstruct economics and love through love. And we're also going to have the Trenton Anti-Violence Coalition on, also talking about Kwanzaa and collective economics. At 8:20, of course, we have DJ Rhino in the State of Hip Hop. It's going to be a year in review, and we have guest hip hop artist Goke coming on. So this is a lot. We got a big show planned, and we're glad to have all of you on. But we're starting off right now with our wonderful guests. So thank you so much for coming on. Ester Lewars and Rafeeza Shahabudeen. We're going to first start talking about the role on the Caribbean. What is the Caribbean Commission? What is it? And when it's like you are a commissioner, what does that mean? Like there's like, we all love the Caribbean, right? We got a lot of Newark heavily influenced Caribbean population, Northeast heavily influenced Caribbean population. What is a Caribbean Commission?
Okay, so I will go ahead. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. Again, my name is Ester Lewars, and I am many things, but today I am here representing the City of Newark Caribbean Commission, as well as speaking about my book, My Ultimate Self, How Death Became My Motivator. And so the Caribbean Commission is one of 3 commissions within the Office of International Relation and Diaspora Affairs at the City of Newark. So the Caribbean Commission was formed in 2015 by Mayor Raz J. Baraka, and then Council President Mildred Crump to be a liaison to the Caribbean community. So existed before were the African Commission and the Hispanic Commission. So in 2015, the Caribbean Commission was formed. So that's been 8 years. And so we do things to inform, to engage, to educate, and even recommend policies to City Hall that will improve the lives of Caribbean residents. And I was one of the first 4 members of the commission. There were 3 other commissioners who were a part of that initial set of members, Commissioner Rollins from Guyana, Commissioner Ince from Barbados, and Commissioner Nesbitt from Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm from Jamaica. And since then, we've had about members that come and go, but right now we have about 15 members from different Caribbean islands. And as a commissioner, we had to submit our credentials and be vetted by the municipal council. So we had to swear in and take an oath of office. And so we are a volunteer group of individuals with vested interest to improve and promote Caribbean culture within the city.
So what are some of the things that are being promoted, right? Like I know that there's a scholarship that I know that Ms. Shahabudeen is going to talk about, but there's some other stuff like, we're about to have New Year's celebrations, but there's I hear there's some level of celebration that's going to take place that's going to be Caribbean in Newark and amazing. What is that?
Okay, so over the years, we do our flag raising. So every country has the ability to do a flag raising. So Jamaica's 60th, we made sure to celebrate and represent and raise our flag outside of City Hall. All the various Caribbean countries, we promote our, the flag raisings. Now, in addition to that, we promote the resources that the city provides to make sure that the residents are aware of the resources that are available to them. And so in addition to the flag raisings, last year, over the years, we recommended that we promote Caribbean Heritage Month. So Caribbean Heritage Month started 18 years ago by President George W. Bush, but it's not well known. And so we recommended that it become an ordinance. And last year, the City Council made it an ordinance. So going forward, every year, we will recognize Caribbean Heritage Month in June in Newark.
Caribbean Heritage Month, great.
Yes. So this June that passed, we had an opening ceremony at City Hall. We had a gala, and from that gala, we raised, $5,000, which Commissioner Shahabudeen will tell you about. So we're here. We do our trunk or treat events during Halloween. During COVID, we did vaccine drives. So different things to help to promote the community.
You did a trunk or treat?
Yes, we did a couple of years.
What is trunk or treat? What is that?
So trunk or treat is where members of the commission bring their vehicles and decorate it, Halloween style, and give out candies. But we also partnered with community services. So there was a COVID drive there. I don't remember the name of the organization that would give out vaccine while we're giving out candies, giving out toothbrush and different things at the same time. So you're muted.
Is there going to be like a festival or like a parade?
Okay,
like
so
I'm not just trying to say like.
Yeah, that's a good question, right?
And Newark, and I'm like, is it going to be like? I mean, I'm not saying it has to be Mardi Gras,
right?
But the world learns how to party from the Caribbean.
Okay.
And am I just jumping into a stereotype?
No, you are not. You are not.
Did I cross a line? Let me know, because I apologize. But when I hear about the Caribbean and a Caribbean culture and festival, is that something that doesn't want to be emphasized? Or is that something that you lean into and embrace, as in like, there's no party like a Caribbean party? Because, yeah.
So that is definitely having a carnival in Newark is something that the commission has discussed in the past. We started, way before COVID, and then COVID came. And so it is something that we would definitely love to have here in the city of Newark. But as you know, everything takes funding. And so we are open to partnering with organizations and funders and sponsors who would like to be on board to seeing that happen here in the city of Newark.
because there's such a large Caribbean population in the city of Newark, right? And each, many of the different islands or places have their own version of carnival. They have their own way of doing it. Some even call it certain things that are maybe different, right, in terms of national celebrations, et cetera, right?
Correct.
Newark has the opportunity to uniquely just be unified in that way. And maybe I'm just pushing an agenda because it's almost going to be New Year's Eve. Maybe we're thinking about that. But if that is in the works, oh my goodness, it would be a very great time, because that the city always needs uplifting spiritually, in terms of fun, in terms of humanity. And I think that the celebrations of life in the Caribbean are some of the best in the world. So at least what I hear.
Yeah, so definitely there are certain times, there's the carnival in New York City, but Caribbean Heritage Month lends itself to doing things like that. So we are definitely looking to see, along with that, we're going to continue the scholarship opportunity this year. So we'll probably come back and talk about that later on, as well as doing other events throughout June, in June 2024.
Okay, so the scholarship. Let's talk about that. I'm going to post the scholarship. Because the scholarship is the major initiative that the Caribbean Commission is doing right now, right?
Correct.
Can you tell us about the scholarship?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. This year, the City of Newark Caribbean Commission is offering a scholarship program for high school students of Caribbean heritage or that are Caribbean. And the requirements are they must complete an application by March 30th. 2024, they must submit a 2 to 3 minute video response and proof of eligibility and post-high school enrollments. So as you can see the flyer, the application link is there, and we're just excited to offer this. We will be honoring 5 high school students with $1,000 each by April 15th.
Oh, awesome. So, and this is great, because I think that part of, and you said, a lot of things have to come together. Things take time. But I'm glad that one of the first things that you've done is create a scholarship, right? Prioritize kids. I think that's excellent. Now, when is the scholarship due?
So the scholarship is open now, and it's due on March 30th of 2024.
Okay, and you opened it early because there's things that you want kids to take time with it, right? Can you tell us what the requirements are? What do they have to do in order to be able to get the scholarship? What are the asks?
Absolutely. So we decided to open it early because we knew students were on winter break. This would give them a perfect opportunity to spend time and work on their videos as well as complete their questions. The application must be completed. Students must be Caribbean or of Caribbean heritage. They will submit a 2 to 3 minute video response answering the 4 questions, and just provide proof of eligibility in terms of post-high school enrollments, as well as meet the requirements for graduation for the class of 2024.
Okay, that's excellent, right? And this is posted, and we'll talk about it more, and hopefully we'll bring you back on to talk about this as we get closer to the deadlines. Because these scholarships are important, and kids need money. And also, I think that it also represents a statement in and of itself that this is what we care about. And these scholarships are important as a statement from our community that this is what we expect from you. This is what we need from you. Here are scholarships that can help you with some of the things that you'll need when you're in college, like books, et cetera, right? So very much appreciate that you doing that. Now, in addition to being an educator, Ms. Lewars, you are you are also an author, and you self-published a book, and that book is. Can you tell us? The book is called "My Ultimate Self: How Death Became My Motivator." That might seem like a big turn from party Caribbean culture to how death became my motivator. But as we look at the end of the year, where we reflect, I think that this is also one of those things that's going to be a back and forth throughout the entire night. All of our guests are going to be going back and forth from party, celebration, looking forward to the future, and reflecting on things that and how to deal with things that can be more somber. So switching gears and moves for a second, what's going on with
Yes. So as an educator, so I'm also an adjunct professor at NJIT, and just being able to. So let me ask you, right, or ask the audience, like, how many have experienced loss? How many of you know someone who passed away, even while we're celebrating the holidays, right? We're so many holidays in December, from Hanukkah, from Christmas, now Kwanzaa. But while we're celebrating, we have people who are losing their lives, whether tragically or through illnesses. And so,
and I would like to add that often during the holidays, those are some of the highest rates of suicide, and also some of the highest times for depression. Because when we think of our early memories of Christmas and New Year's or holidays and these celebrations, it's often a matter of family, getting together. And when one of them dies or passes away, that memory of happiness often becomes grief,
right.
and many people become almost inconsolable around these times, right? In terms of just suffering from depression because they miss their loved ones
Right.
from those memories.
Yeah, so for me, it was I lost my dad 10 years ago, and he was elderly. He was 90 years old in Jamaica. But then at the end of 2020, on December 18th, I lost my 18-year-old grandnephew in a car accident. And so those were, it was a different type of loss when you lose a young person, promising person. He had just finished his first semester at Keene University studying computer science. And so that was a very tragic thing for our family. And so a year later, I was sitting at my desk and I thought to myself, what if I die today? So that was the original name of the book. What if I die today while driving home? So many of us leave our homes with the intention to get to our destination, but we never get to our destination, or they never get to their destination or make it back home. And so I came to that conclusion that it is important that we not just accept that we too are going to go at some point, but how do we live our life being purposeful? How do we live our life connecting with ourselves, knowing who we are, connecting with God, serving others, and being the best version of ourselves every day, so that if and when we get to that place, there's no regrets. And so the book is separated in 3 parts. The first part just talks about life things, right? Going through the darkness. The darkness are those places, as you talked about earlier, being depressed, losing your loved one. It can make you depressed, feeling stuck. You're in a job, but you have the intentions of moving up, but there's no opportunities there. So things like that can make you get to a place of depression. Your relationship. So it's not just losing people physically, but it's those circumstances, those dark places, those challenges where we find ourselves in, and then we get not knowing what to do. So understanding that those challenges are opportunities for us to grow, for us to learn who we are, to depend on God, to seek knowledge and better ourselves, so that we can get to that next level, because there is always a light. There's always a next level wherever you are. And so, the first part of the book. And then the second part, I talk about people that I lost. My grandfather, when I was 3 years old, was poisoned in Jamaica, right? So that was a big story. That was a big event for the community. And then the third part of the book, it talks about, those things. What habits did I use to get from where I was, losing people, going through a divorce after 15 years, being overweight, and just taking steps and strategies to make sure that I move from where I was to where I want to go. Because there is always something in us, right? God put something in us, and we have that vision of what is it that we want to do, that light of how we want to serve others. And it is important that we act on those notions that we have deep down with us, so that we can become that person, so that we can serve others and do, some of the work that you're doing here, like you're taking action and doing things. And so my book encourages people to take action. So it also has worksheets. As an educator, there's worksheets and different things, strategies in the book that helps individuals.
So your strategy, and it seems like when we're, and especially, this is a great time to talk about this, right? Like in terms of these holidays, that when you're dealing with grief, that dealing with grief can be translated into something positive and life affirming, almost like, when a forest burns, then it serves as fertile ground for new life. And it's like that life cycle, right? Like, as in something dies, something is created.
Yes.
And to embrace that cycle of creation as long as we can, as long as we have life ourselves, we can create and do things special to honor the memory of those who passed away.
Definitely. And yes, honor them and live our life. They're no longer here, but how do we now continue on and live our life as if, in their memory? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We very much appreciate having you. We are a hip hop political talk show. So one of the things that we ask all our guests is, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Okay, I didn't know that one was coming.
Anyone, or who you're rocking with now?
Okay, favorite hip hop. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to. Let's see. Can you go, Shahabudeen?
And it could be a flexible, just anyone you're rocking with, anyone you like. Doesn't have to be. And Rafeeza, your mic is off.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just give us who's yours. I mean, no pressure. You could even expand the definition of hip hop to like Caribbean styles that are very similar, because hip hop did start as a combination of
we started this stuff.
Caribbean, Latino, all influences in hip hop. So you can name some influence as well.
So I'm gonna say to you, like, you asked that question and then my brain went out. So he's a teacher. I met him the other day down in Newark. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name.
Okay, that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to put you too on the spot, right? So it's okay. How about you, Ms. Shahabudeen?
I just listen to a variety of music. I still enjoy, Jay-Z, Kanye, the greats. I just enjoy music in general. So those are two. Eminem, I can think of those at the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Well, that's who you're rocking with. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on this last episode for the year. And we'll have you both back. And we want updates on the scholarship. We're going to want to see how that party's going on, because Newark needs a party, right? I think that, like every community, I think parties can be celebrations that are transformative and positive and add to the life and culture of the city. So good luck. And we will talk to you really soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right. Hey, take care. Take care. All right. With that is that segment of All Politics Are Local, coming out to the end of the year and our end of the year celebration of All Politics Are Local. We now have our next guest, Dr. Myrna Morales. And she has her doctorate in library science, and she's head of the Lolita Project, that is about shaping public consciousness about libraries' impacts on our perceptions, right? Our perceptions of politics, our perceptions of issues, and how we deal with those issues. And we always love having Dr. Morales on our show. Dr. Morales is one of the first students I've ever taught. And like my very first year teaching, she was many, many years ago. She was my first student, debater, always someone who really understands that there is a need to solve problems and make the world a little better place. She has been doing that her entire life, and honored to have her on again. So,
well, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you well.
That's great. Thank you.
So what is so you're located in Boulder, Colorado?
I'm currently, the project is located in Boulder, Colorado. And so that's kind of where we're moving in the intervention. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Alston, for always, I
don't have a doctorate.
I mean, you do though, because you spent your entire life cultivating a bunch of us, and you've maintained connections with us so that you can continue to either cultivate us, or like you understand the reciprocal nature of any teaching relationship where the student has just as much to offer as the professor. And so so as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the University of Life, you're a doctor, especially when you've seen what I've come in contact with over the last, having been in the academic halls. Anyway, so the Lolita Project. The Lolita Project is my partners and Mija Kurz and I's attempt to resource undersourced information. So so it certainly is about libraries and libraries and thinking about the ways libraries shape the consciousness of the public. And also, like, the way I like to put it is, that it attempts, like the Lolita Project attempts to assess the information infrastructure and address particular issues and and gaps within the information structure. So in this case, we're looking at the question of Palestine. And thinking about, and so right now we're looking at the question of Palestine. Like, I think that when we look at what this idea of what epistemicide is, right? And knowledge production and knowledge creation, knowledge, wisdom, ways of being, falls into epistemology, which is just a creation and the making of knowledge and the knowledge production. And so we looked at the ways in which go ahead.
For our audience, epistemology is like the philosophy of knowledge, and it's a question of that is, how do we know what we know?
Exactly.
Right?
That's right.
How do we know what we know? How do we know what our knowledge base is? Which is especially important now, right? People are talking about false information. There's a lot of lies on the internet. There's when you're talking about levels of what do you know, that's a major problem that everybody who cares about democracy, everybody who cares about freedom and government and how to govern is dealing with all over the world right now.
That's right. And just to interrupt you really quick, I want to say that during FDR's presidency, he coupled libraries with the informed citizenry, right? So FDR was if you want to have an informed citizenry, we need to make sure that our libraries are tight. So then, and so, continue, because I think, please continue.
No, that was awesome. I did not know that in terms of that there was literally a conversation about how the entire public library system was part of democracy, because then you have this problem of the internet overtaking libraries as a way of getting information. Maybe, I don't know. You would know more about that than me, but the question is, what is epistemicide?
And so,
you mentioned a few times. And so epistemology is the philosophy of knowledge. How do you know what you know? What is epistemicide?
So it is the genocide of how we know what we know. And so every one of us, right? If we think about, so every one of us borrows from a particular school of thought, and we make decisions based on that particular school of thought. And that particular and school of thought ranges. It can range from, some people guide their life using astrology. And some people guide their life using black radical thought. Some people guide their life using Marx. Some people guide their life by what they consider to be a cultural aspect, right? By Latino culture, Mexican culture, Puerto Rican culture, and Nigerian culture. Like, these are all ways of life. And in the instance of like the question of Palestine, like Palestine also has their own culture and their own school of thought. And so when we think about, and specifically like where the project is looking at, right? Because as we talked about earlier, prior to this, right, all politics are local. The Lolita Project is looking specifically at the numbers of a particular keyword. So, and so in Boulder, Colorado, if we look at just the numbers alone in terms of like, the question we've assessed that the information infrastructure in Boulder, Colorado is insufficient currently to actually address for the public to be informed. So in the ways in which that the genocide has allowed to be played out in Palestine, and it is a battle that is historical, like since the Nakba in the 40s, like, right, we see, and there's a really good documentary called The Great Book Robbery that engages with the ways in which, when the occupation happened, that Palestinian homes, or homes that belong to Palestinians, where they had their own libraries and they had their own libraries, their own books, their own information system, as then once they were forced to leave their homes, the particular repository of books that they had in each home then became seized and entered into an Israeli archive, to which I think more recently, it's been contended with, or rather that the information has been slowly being returned to communities, or being returned to the Palestinian community in Palestine. But we're looking at a complete erasure of information, of a way of being, a way of how we know what we know. And you can also see that in terms of like, right, the need to center indigenous knowledge in the fight for climate justice, right? We understand that in the U.S. government, and the U.S. government has dissipated a lot of information that indigenous folks, and not just dissipated or disappeared, but also delegitimized and unvalidated a lot of, in academia, a lot of the information that indigenous folks have come through. And as a result, we're slow, right? Not slowly, but we're more, as the urgency kicks up around climate justice and the need to address climate change, we're realizing like, oh, we did away with a whole bunch of information that actually serves its purpose in the current moment. And this is not just particular, like, we can certainly look at the ways in which, and I think we've talked about this before in your program, the ways in which JFK, who was a former librarian, right? And so what was his function around?
He was a former librarian?
Oh, yeah. He was actually going to be the Librarian of Congress before he got tapped to be a G-man, or before he became head of the FBI. And his goal in the head of the FBI was like,
you mean not JFK, you mean
J. Edgar Hoover. Sorry about that.
Okay. I was like,
sorry
whoa.
About that. No.
Right,
I apologize for not having that. I should have written those, make sure that I have that. But yeah, J. Edgar Hoover.
Wait. So that's okay. So you have your doctorate in library science, and you're giving us some great little tidbits here. Like, I did not know that FDR understood the importance of libraries to democracy.
Yeah.
So libraries are actually a national security issue in terms of people have to have access to information.
People absolutely have to have access. Like you cannot have, and it's not just having access to information, it's having access to information that is reliable, that is actually on the ground too, right? Like it's not just, right? Like if I look at Boulder Public Library and I do a keyword search of Israel, and I come up with roughly 6,200 items on the keyword Israel alone. Now I do that same keyword search on Palestine and it's 1,200 that comes up. So you already immediately see the disparity. And so it's not just the numbers, although the numbers is what we're forefronting in this particular project, because that's what people understand. And that's particularly what middle class, folks who engage in policy change at that level understand, is they understand numbers. Like they don't necessarily, it's harder, right? When you start talking about it, like, okay, then beyond the number, let's actually evaluate the collection. So is Palestine, all the items on Palestine, is it just keywords or words that are attached to Zionistic propaganda? And so at that point do we have a collection that actually talks about intelligently about a community? And it's not to say, and there are, and like, it's not to say that, I certainly, and I'm working with Palestinian leaders within the Boulder community and as well as like, and a pro-Palestine Israeli leader within the community to actually really try to create a robust collection that when these particular moments of crises arise, that people can access the necessary information that they need to make an informed decision.
So what you're saying is that when this comes up, and for example, right, this comes up in the news and people start going, hey, what's going on with this conflict? It's all over the news. What's some information I can get? And let's assume they don't just go to Google, right? Because we're going to talk about that in a second. Let's assume they go, even though they go to Google, they're like, hey, what can I get at my local library? Where can I do this research? And you're saying there's a possibility that even in the level of information they may not have information that talks about the Nakba. They may not, like, in all honesty, I consider myself, I understand a lot of stuff, right? That I know a lot about a little. I know a little bit about a lot, right? There are a lot of topics that I go through. I read a lot of stuff about it, but it wasn't really until recently that I knew what the Nakba was, right? And understood. And I mean, like, it was in adulthood. It was not during my childhood. It was well into adulthood that I even knew that there was a Nakba or what it was, right? And this is someone at the same time. I had been following Netanyahu's career since high school and quoted him in debate for to do very well, right? Like he was a source. When he was a general, he was a source of information that I used in debate rounds to win a lot of debate rounds, right? So in my sphere of knowledge, I was very well versed in understanding a particular perspective, right? Like Netanyahu's perspective, front and center, reinforced because I saw him on the PBS NewsHour, right? When he was a general, understood the book that he did. Read the Time magazine articles that wrote about the book, understood things about his life. I believe he lost his brother to violence, right? And was and understood his philosophy about violence and understood it so well in terms of dealing with violence and dealing with, quote, terrorism and terrorists, that I was able to research, quote him, understand his logic, and use it to win debates, right? Whereas I never really, but I was well into adulthood before ever being able to even know about the Nakba and the implications of that, and even how that, even understanding fully, like I've heard about and talked about and read about the right of return in negotiations without understanding what the Nakba was, right? Like, so, as in the negotiation points, many Palestinians insisted on a right of return. But if you don't know what the Nakba is, you don't really understand why they're so dead set on, like, no, we need to have a right of return, right? Like, we need to be able to come back to where we lost. But so is that part of what you're talking about in terms of?
I mean, I think it's important, and I appreciate, you know, your vulnerability around talking about the ways in which, like, I think, like, you've outlined the passage, I think, of most U.S. citizens when they enter into an inquiry about a particular subject, and who we have readily accessible to us, right? It's not necessarily, it's not an accident that Netanyahu was who you had access to. Like, we look at, you know, when we think about the ways, like, and you know, and you're not the only one, right? Like, for me, I certainly have had, like, I certainly have had Palestine in different ways forefronted in my life, and, you know, and it wasn't until someone wrote an article that clicked everything for me. And of course, it's one of those lefty rags of lefty rags, or that actually attempts to tell and really engage with what I think is the truth. Some people, I'm sure some people may not necessarily agree with me, but that's neither here nor there. Like, so,
but I think that goes to your point, right? Like, you have to have access to information to determine what you think is true, even while at the same time recognizing that what you feel is true, that what you believe is true is subjective. Because I think that you acknowledge that a lot of your beliefs are subjective, right? That's the nature of the thing.
That's right. It's the nature of all information. All information is subjective. Anybody that tells you that it's neutral or that they're coming in neutral have not done a good job in examining their own lens.
And I think that's the level of honesty that's needed when you're dealing with information. But at the same time, there is a quality of information that's different from lying. Like, there's a difference between spinning and lying.
That's right.
And right now we have, because if you have accurate information, then you could recognize that they're both sides, whatever, like their understanding of it. Now, facts are facts, right? Like, as in, Nakba happened. If you are assuming, if your information does not include that, then you in debates, you're like, you need to take this into account when you're saying that they shouldn't have a right of return, right? Like, and at the same time, you're saying there should be such a thing as human rights, and you support what the United Nations said, and that you should not be able to acquire land through violence, right? Like, right. There are certain things that cannot be true altogether, or at least you have to acknowledge certain things that, like, we don't care about what the UN said about not acquiring land through violence, right? Like there has to be a certain level. Something's got to give.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You have all of these things together, and that does not mean that I am not wrong. Does not mean that you cannot be wrong. But we engage in the debate with a certain set of facts or a certain understanding that can be contested.
That's right.
One of the things I recently wrote a curriculum for debate, and
when are you going to share that with me?
Today.
Right? Okay, great. Yay!
Right. So one of the things that we talk about is evidence, and evidence must be clear, transparent, verifiable. I got that from journalism. I also got that from academia. It's really all the same thing. Your evidence has to be debatable, right? So it has to be clear, transparent, verifiable. Inside of what you're dealing with in terms of epistemic genocide, right? Epistemic murder. As in murdering, like, ways of thinking.
That's right.
how do you differentiate what you're talking about from like Trumpers who talk about, well, you know, it's all relative, it's all normative. It's just, you know, because like when they're talking about fake news and how, or other people come to the conclusion that everybody has their own facts. Everybody either is making stuff up and nothing is real. Because I think that's where we are right now. How do you deal with that? And how can libraries deal with that?
You know, and I think that's where, and that's where, like, for me, what would be really important, and I think like transformative, if a library decided that they were going to throw their hat in the ring to combat the epistemicide that's happening within what's happening within the Palestinian community. That is a direct result of U.S. intervention. And so like the role that, and so I'm speaking specifically about U.S. libraries, academic and public and special libraries, is the question of how do we center those who are most directly impacted? Because sure, right? Like I can contest your reality because I'm living in Boulder right now. So you can tell me that what is a problem, that there is a particular like unhoused problem happening in Newark, or that nationally that unhoused is a national problem and a national crisis. But I don't necessarily see that in Boulder. Like, of course, Boulder, like, you know, busts out a lot of unhoused people. Like, and that's kind of, you know, there's certainly a politic of richness and class that's happening in there. But if you're saying that you are on, like, if you are on the ground actually engaging with the issue, right? So like center those who are most directly impacted. I think we've heard that before and we will continue to hear that. Like those who actually suffer from the problem can tell us what the reality is, right? Like people can say that truth is subjective or that facts is subjective, but if you have a knife sticking out of your back and you're saying that it hurts, am I gonna then tell you no, it doesn't hurt?
And I think
like who's holding the authority within that question?
I hear you, right? And I do not think that you are wrong about that at all. I think that a way to deal with that is the knife clear, transparent? Is it verifiable? Right. Like what is the evidence? Right. Because I
guess it's like when you're talking about Trumpers, right? Like when you're talking about a population that is lit up in trauma, and this is what I think, like, you know, you're not talking like it. You know, I haven't done enough. I've read information around what is it? The anti-vaxxers is also falling along that line with Trumpers. Although, like, you know, anti-vaxxers become a little more complicated as the conversation around distrust towards systems and believing the information of systems, right? Because there is like putting the Trumpers aside, because I think that, you know, they're talking about all facts are subjective, and you're talking to a bunch of people who are operating from a scarcity mindset, and they're thinking like, if we don't annihilate or at least attempt to like mess with other people's reality, our reality or our comfort is going to be gone. They feel that threat. And I think like when we look at Tea Partiers, where the Tea Party, like, they rose up because of the conditions that they were feeling, like down in Shreveport, Louisiana. Like that was a party that resulted from the conditions of their own local government being ineffective for them and bringing them towards environmental ruin and economic ruin. And so as a result, like there's different degrees. Like when you're engaging, yes, that your points of like, is it verifiable? Is it transparent? Is it clear? Is it, and in fact, can it be debated? Like because realities, right? Realities people's reality are up for debate. Whether or not we like it, people's realities are up to debate. And some healthy debate is really important in any democracy, or at least in any society that wishes to coexist with the diversity that we have here in the US. And so I do think, but when you're talking about it like from a trauma perspective, which is what I think Trumpers are, and this is not to like to legitimize that, you know, not use the way that mental health argument has been used to like to justify some of white supremacist behaviors, such as like blowing up and like and mass killing folks in supermarkets. Like, this is not to do that, but it's actually to really examine like what would cause an individual to deny a very real reality that's happening right now. And like, if you look at the internet and you follow particular like citizen journalists down in Palestine, like Palestinians who are on the ground, like Bisan, like who is documenting the horror, to sit there and say like that's not real. Like you know, the reality, you have to engage with whether or not like, okay, so what autonomic response system are you using to justify the kind of violence that is happening in Palestine in this moment?
And that is that I think when you're talking about I think that what you're talking about is really a more huge problem when you deal with where people get their information from. Most of the sources, that the long form journalism, the stuff where journalists have a code of being clear, transparent, and verifiable. Like, even if they're wrong, right? They can be. We know they're wrong because it's been verified as being wrong, right? Like as in, other journalists can go and check what they're doing and go, that doesn't make any sense, right? Or, no, we checked your evidence and here's what it says, right? Like, so when you have the long form journalism, you have all of these actually good journalistic sources, because the truth isn't hidden, right? And a lot of the things that people think are controversial aren't even controversial, right? Like, they're actually in publications that give point-by-point arguments. I've been talking on this issue of Israel and Palestine. I've been reading a lot of Foreign Affairs, right? It's a center-right publication, right? It is where Republicans and Democrats go to talk about foreign policy. You'll have Secretary of States right there. You'll have academics right there, right? And they publish articles that have really good sourcing on like how Israel is one state, effectively. There's a one state reality, right? And how when you deal with both Israel and Palestine, it is in reality, on the ground, it's one state. It's a state with a minority in it, right? And literally in the article, they made the argument for why it should be called an apartheid state. There was a series, and that was back in April, right? That was back before, well before October. And they were saying that the authors of the article were arguing that in order for there to actually get to a point where Palestinian rights can be protected at all, Israel has to be responsible for it, because they are effectively the sovereign. Because even though they're not in Gaza, they control who goes in and out. They control the water. They control the things that a sovereign state controls. So you can't pretend that it's not. If you deal with the West Bank, they were dealing with how like Israel controls that. Even though the Palestinian Authority is there, they're effectively controlled by the Israelis, in that they get their funding from them. They can't really do much that Israel doesn't want them to do, and they're effectively taking Palestinian land as of then, right? Like, they were under the Netanyahu government. They were killing Palestinians, taking their land, threatening them. Many people were leaving their lands either out of threats of death or death, right? Their land was being confiscated in terms of building more settlements. This is in mainstream publications. This is not a fringe publication. This is not the lefty thing that you're talking about. This was very mainstream publications that are right of center.
That affects our policy, right? Affects what we end up doing, and how we move. And it directly impacts, like, have you seen that video from that Palestinian man from New Jersey who essentially sends us all to hell?
No,
he's just like, he's from New Jersey, and he is like, literally, he's like, I work, I pay taxes, and he's visiting Palestine. He's visiting relatives in Palestine, and he's like, and this is what my taxes are going to. He's like, it's going to bomb my local neighborhood store. It's going to bomb my community. He's like, this is, and he's like giving us the finger and just telling us F off, right? So like, there are real implications to that foreign affairs, and those types of like center-right information. That's not like, you know, if you talk about the checkpoints and the ways in which the Israeli government controls the Palestinian population, like if they close down a checkpoint and you're on the wrong side of that wall, like you're sleeping outside, like, and that's just like, you know, this is people's realities that is shaped by our policies, by the lack of information, and it's either misinformation or disinformation. The difference being intentions, right? Like Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But what I was talking about is accurate information, right? Like the Foreign Affairs article, they were making like even the people you disagree with, they are putting down evidence, and that evidence gets contested. Like, they were contested and they had a rebuttal that I thought was pretty thorough, right? But there's a process of vetting, there's an academic process of vetting information that even happens on the center right when they're debating about policy. But one thing that's different is that the best sources for actual journalism that's clear, transparent, and verifiable, even if we disagree with it, right? Even if ideologically we're on a different side of it, they are dealing with actual information. It's behind a paywall, right? So the best information that we have, that we click on, because we don't go to the library, right? Mm-hmm. We click on information and we get that information that's readily at our fingertips. And most of the information is garbage because it's not clear, transparent, and verifiable. And the stuff that is actually like that involves actual research, right, is behind a paywall. Is there any effort for libraries to become online repositories of information for free?
I mean, their library, like there are like the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, who've also had their history of censoring Palestinians through the Steve Salaita case. And also they have a repository. Like there are libraries who are actively moving towards trying to, and it's called like either the open science framework or open access. And there are, you know, there are ways in which you can bypass, like there are libraries that do make active effort to bypass like barriers to information access, which also includes the paywall. So for example, like, there's New York Times. Sometimes you can get the New York Times for free by just accessing it through your library catalog, through your online library catalog. You can access the Boston Globe for free through your online catalog. There is like they actually do make an active effort around the thing, you know, the information that they perceive that the community wants and needs. Now, the question is around Palestine and whether or not libraries do see a role or think that they have a role to play around it. Because I think you're right. Like, what in what ways? And so like, and in pushing them, like, okay, so how do we access, I guess, foreign affairs, which is center right, but getting access to all of their articles and posting them and saying like, these are the information, creating like research guides around how to find good information around Palestine. that could, and a reader's advisory. Like there are ways in which libraries themselves, even having a simple funding line item. And I think it's important. I do think that, for
Palestine. What do you mean by funding line item?
Like, for example, like I think the Boulder Public Library maybe buys one book on Palestine every 2 months. And so like you can imagine that maybe their line item for Palestine or for maybe
right?
Huh?
That was hypothetical. Like one
No, that's not hypothetical. They may do one book there's occasion where they do one book a month, but I mean it grows, like you could tell, right? Like you follow the money, you get to see where people, like where the importance of a library of people's priority is at. And so you look at Palestine, and that becomes a question. I do think that Palestine, even as we see the ways in which the question of Palestine has sharpened a lot of our contradictions, right? Like now we're talking about Sudan, now we're talking about Congo, now we're talking about Puerto Rico, now we're talking about all nations affected by settler colonialism. And so in being able to engage with that question of Palestine as libraries and information professionals, you see that more.
All right, so thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming on, and we appreciate you a lot. Right, like you have like the work that you're doing with libraries, the conversation that you're having, because I know that although you're talking about Israel and Palestine and informations in library, in the very specific case of Boulder, Colorado, it's larger when you're talking about a larger issue of epistemic genocide, or when you're talking about and many issues, right? Like you're talking about the Congo, you start talking about what information do we have available, and what is available to make decisions from. And I think that, and so I appreciated this conversation, especially the difference between like information that is fake, right, and information that is where the facts are clear, but people might have a different take on what those facts are, which is the way we actually have debate, right? Like, so you're like, in order to have a debate, there's certain things that need to happen. If we don't have that knowledge, we don't even have those debates.
That's right.
So we definitely appreciate you. We're going to have you back on, and people that you are in conversation with back on to continue these conversations.
Absolutely.
Last question: who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
I remember you caught me with that. And I like fumbled around it. And so I'm going to say an artist that has collaborated with hip hop artists in the past. And so Amai Kudo Elebois, who's this like really dope priestess goddess coming out of Canada, who is doing, who's doing a lot of great work in her music and with her own political activism, and trying to bring attention and awareness to water issues.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Morales, for today, and we will have you back on soon. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Professor Austin. I appreciate it.
And I'll get you that curriculum. All right. So thank you. That is another segment of All Politics So Local. Thank you for that. We are now getting ready to go to our next segment on All Politics So Local. And for this next segment, this is really like, what has happened last year? What's going to happen this year? What can we look forward to? What were some of the things in the past that are going to be leading us to our future? We have really great guests on right now. And I know that Zaid put this together. He's having technical difficulties and not getting back on, but I'm like, but I'm here. I'm here for this great conversation with these wonderful people. I am always honored to have all of you on and to have that information. All right, Zaid, you here? Are you back? Are you back? Are you back? You're not back. You can't hear us, can you? All right. So if Zaid, if you can't hear me, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead with this. And again, I'll go ahead with this particular section and our year in review. Oh, you're typing stuff in. Zai is typing stuff in right now. But we're going to start. This is last year, a lot of stuff. This year, 2023, a lot of stuff happened, right? We talk about what happened in the past, present, to determine what's going to happen next year. I think we hear you a little bit, Zai. I was stalling a little bit for you, but But what happens next year? We have our guest. We have Dr. Kelly Harris, Senior Staff Director in the Africana Studies Department at the University of Pennsylvania. We're going to have Keesha Eure, the Director of Newark's Office of Anti-Violence, on as well. We have on right now Monifa Bandele, who's Chief Strategy Officer for Moms Rising. And please add, because I know you do a lot, right, Monifa? You have a lot of hats. You do a lot. I just got that from the latest LinkedIn page, but I know that you are always doing positive things within the community on multiple levels. Much respect for the work that you do, for the multiple layers of work that you do and have been doing. And also, we have the chief strategy. We have Racquel Romans-Henry, the policy director for Salvation and Social Justice, on as well. I was also doing a lot of great work around Salvation and Social Justice in New Jersey. And that is an active organization that I believe has dealt with prisoner rights, ban the box, and a lot of other rights considerations that have been in New Jersey specifically, but they're national issues. So having you here, an honor and a pleasure. If I said anything about any of you in your introductions, please correct me now, including your names, etc., and what you and titles and what you are known for and doing. And you could do that as this first question, right? All of you are either activists, educators who deal with the problems that are within our society and actively deal with them, actively try to train others to deal with them, recognize them. What's 2023 been like in the issues that you deal with, that you work on? And what do we need? What do we expect for 2024? Real vague question, but necessary. And anyone can go first. So without, and if no volunteers, then Ms. Bandele, can we start with you?
Yes, sure. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Loud.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for having me on and for having me be a part of this discussion about a year in review. And yes, one of the things that you named that I do that I'm really proud of is my work at Moms Rising. Part of the issues that we've been dealing with in 2023, really rising over the past couple of years, is the issue of maternal health, specifically Black maternal health and Black maternal mortality in the United States. We've seen a spike since 2020 in really harmful and bad outcomes for Black birthing people. And so in 2023, we've just really rolled up our sleeves and dug in even deeper to amplify and enhance the solutions that we already know, which are to give resources to Black birth workers, to look to doulas and midwives, and to really pull away from what has been kind of like the commodification of our whole healthcare system that's really causing bad outcomes for Black women. So that's one piece. Okay. And in the other hats that I particularly wanted to come on here tonight as an activist with the Malcolm X grassroots movement and a member of the Movement for Black Lives, we're continuing to fight to shift the discussion in the United States on what is community safety, what is public safety, pulling away from ideas of prison and policing and carceral solutions and leaning into public health solutions like care, like health and mental services, like better housing, like having community-based violence organizations. And while we see a huge backlash to the calls and demands that we put out in 2020, we do see some advances. Namely, we had a win in Congress in Pennsylvania with Summer Lee. This idea that the squad is expanding, that people are really growing into and leaning into this sense of abolition, this sense that our communities are safer when there are greater systems of care, when there are greater systems of public health, and less systems of incarceration and harm.
Okay.
I'll go on mute.
Zaid, I think that there's you came back on, but I think that there's something else with your sound, because whenever I take you off on mute, everyone echoes. I brought you back in for that conversation, so try coming out.
I'm on mute. I don't know what happened.
All right. Yeah, because I think that when you're not on mute, there's definitely going to be an echo. So I put you on mute for a second. Now, you mentioned so we're going to get into these conversations more robustly, but you mentioned I just want to go back, and because we're going to go from the stuff that you talked about with Moms Rising, we're going to deal a lot with the anti-violence work, and I definitely want to get into the work from Defund the Police and the stuff that you were on. But the question that I have in terms of maternal mortality, I saw a Meet the Press mini documentary on Black women and infant mortality, and not just infant mortality, but health crisis, as in Black women dying in maternal mortality rates, and it seems like having a doula midwife, having a, and I think you used the term that you used was maternal practitioner, or
I was saying Black birth workers.
Black birth workers
in general,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
The quick story I like to tell is that the outcomes for our daughters are worse than the outcomes for our mothers, right? And my mom is from rural South Texas, where everyone in the county that she was from in Wharton was born from a midwife, Mary Clark. Mary Clark gave birth to my mom or her siblings, her first cousins, their parents, and their siblings and first cousins. So like 2 whole generations of people in this region of Black folks were delivered by this Black birth worker, right? And what you saw, which I mentioned, is that this shift to hospitalization, really the commodification of giving birth, there was the Mary Clarks of the country were banned. Midwives were outlawed, and you had to go to these like medical apartheid type places. And so you see a shift where when my mom had her children, she had C-sections, it was very medicalized, it was very hospitalized and so forth. And you kind of see that shift there where it's getting worse and worse and worse because our healthcare systems are, inherently white supremacist and inherently harmful to Black people and Black bodies, but particularly when we're in this very vulnerable state of being in labor and giving birth. And sadly, right here where I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, we just had a recent tragedy at Woodhull Hospital. Perfectly healthy young Black woman lost her life delivering a baby shortly after. And so these are the stories that are just like hitting the news, and they're just increasing. And now the people who have access to midwives and birth workers are people who have resources. And so we're fighting to say, no, everyone has to have access back to like the Mary Clarks, right? We got to have Medicaid reimbursement for doulas and midwives. And we have to open that up so that our folks aren't going into these hospitals. And we also have to hold these hospitals accountable. It's a both and, because we still do, of course, need high levels of care at times. And that care should be high quality. It should be not only what we need, but what we deserve as Black women.
And I think that may be a prediction for 2024 on that particular issue. What are some of the things we should look for? I think you started talking about having doulas and midwives be eligible for Medicare, and those pushes like that. What can we look forward to in 2024?
Yes, Medicaid. And we see Medicaid expanding for postpartum care, which would include doulas even after you give birth. Just happened in Missouri. There's just an expansion of having access to Medicaid for your postpartum period, for doulas, for midwives. We've won some things here in New York City through the public advocate, Jumaane Williams. He did a local momnibus, which was a compilation of bills to really kind of shift resources in the city. But it's an uphill battle because we're in a place where there's cuts on healthcare. Again, I'll link the issues, and an increase on policing, right? Our police budget keeps going up, and we have to fight for pennies so that the women in our community who are dying in childbirth can have the access to the resources they need. So while we're winning, it's still a fight. But for 2024, we see an increase. We see more and more people recognizing that we have the solutions, that we need to listen to Black women, not to be cliche-ish, but it's true, especially when we are talking about our own bodies and what we're experiencing.
Right. And it's not just even like listening to individuals. You're talking about there's all the data goes one way on this, right?
All of it.
Like apparently all the data goes one way, in that the medicalization's been bad. Doulas and midwives work, right? Like it's listen to Black women, but listen to this data, because you're not just listening. Because I think sometimes when we like listen to Black women, people are like it seems cliche, right? Like, oh, right. But it's a lot more basic, because like all that work's been done and all the data goes one way, and not listening is just
Jonathan, if I may, can I?
Yeah.
Where's the white women?
One more thing before we shift is that the states with the worst maternal health outcomes are the states with the strictest abortion bans. So understand that this is connected. It's the full range of listen to my body. It's the full range of my body must be autonomous. I should be able to control what happens in my body, in my womb. It's all connected. I want to make sure to bring that up as we approach the anniversary of Roe, which is actually in January.
Can you repeat that again? Like, can you repeat that for everyone to hear? Just like that's the states?
The same states that have the worst maternal health outcomes in the United States. This is Georgia, this is Louisiana. These states match up evenly with the states that have the harshest abortion bans. So where you have less reproductive health care, where you're banning reproductive health care, you're also having negative outcomes in maternal health. So we believe it's not just a correlation, it's a causation. Like these things are connected, of course. These are also the states that haven't expanded Medicaid, right? So there's hospital closures and there's lack of access to hospitals, period, more or less midwives and doulas. All of those things are connected.
Thank you. And Racquel Romans-Henry, this year, 2023, what is it that you've been working on? And by the way, while we're talking about this, feel free to jump in each other's conversations as well and ask questions, because we have all of you on here for a reason. Thank you. Welcome, Keesha Eure, to the conversation. Glad to have you on. But please tell us, what is the thing that you've been working on in 2023? What is the thing that we should take away from 2023? And what can we look forward to on that issue in 2024?
No, thank you. And my sister Monifa, she started us off beautifully, because here in the city of Trenton, where Salvation Social Justice is based, we too are working very closely with advocate partners on the Black maternal health crisis that exists in the state. And just to echo everything she said, but also to just identify the areas of alignment between the fight for Black mothers to be able to bring life into this world, and then the fight to maintain life, as we so frequently see it snuffed out through interactions with, various institutions, whether it be the schools, medical institutions, or most notably public safety, law enforcement, right? So our work at Salvation Social Justice hits a lot of those different points. Yes, we're working on the Black maternal health crisis. We're very proud of the work that we're doing in establishing the city of Trenton's very first Black-led birthing center and resource hub. So we're very proud of that work. We have a phenomenal team. We're doing that in partnership with the Greater Mount Zion CDC. And also the work that we're doing around police accountability and public safety. Most recently, we've been working on a bill to establish community-led first response teams as an alternative to policing. What we are advocating for is nothing new. There have been various models throughout the country that have proven to be incredibly successful in not just minimizing the instances of or interrupting violence in the communities, but also significantly minimizing the harmful interactions between law enforcement and communities of color. So most recently, the bill that we've been working on for years, along with our advocate organizations, is up for a Senate hearing on January 4th. So we are very excited about its potential, and we have been assembling our troops to show up and show out and really communicate the importance of what it means to community-led.
Okay, I'll name the bill number and the sponsor, if you will.
Oh, you got it, Baba. So the Senate bill number is Senate Bill 4250. The Senate sponsor is Senator Beach. Again, that's Senate Bill 4250, and it would establish community-led first response teams throughout the state, pilot programs. So more largely speaking, what we're doing is, in the totality of our work, is we're really drilling home this message of community-led, what it means to have community-led solutions. And that goes from our birthing to birthing our babies, to educating our babies, and then also protecting our babies from the streets and from falling into the traps of the prison industrial complex. So very excited to see what's happening with that and continuing our work with our advocate partners as it relates to more police accountability efforts, such as the use of force directive, CCRBs, and the like. So we're excited to continue that work into 2024 as well.
Okay, that's.
I wanted to, if I can, Jonathan, and I want to apologize to everybody for all of the tech madness I've been facing trying to get on. Right, I want to shout out Racquel. Racquel was a very strong voice. We just had some testimony in the assembly on the CCRB bill. We did a redo of that with a pilot twist, right? And she was a strong advocate and has been one of the lead voices in our community, in the state on that front, repping for salvation and social justice in a very real way. So I just wanted to lift that up. Monifa, it's good to see you, right? Monifa is, I've watched her grow up for a long time, and I'm very proud of all the work that she's putting in on so many fronts. I just wanted to welcome her back. I'll step back and continue your cueing, Mr. Jonathan, as you were.
Oh, but feel free to jump in. Everyone else just has to mute their mics. That's all. Because it seems that when we're all muted, then everything's working well. So Zai, jump in, and I think we have our own tech fix. Also, check and see if you have multiple pages open that are open to this, because sometimes that causes the echo. If there are multiple pages open inside of your on your computer, so check that. Make sure there's only one thing open, and that might cure it as well. And again, in this is going to be a conversation. Hopefully that and they will piggyback on each other, and feel free to also ask each other questions or comment and talk to each other. The question that I have also is, You mentioned something in the beginning when you were talking about in Trenton that there are maternal centers. There are Black run. What was it? Talk to me.
Yeah, so Trenton currently exists as one of the most deadliest cities. Well, first of all, we'll say New Jersey. Monifa was talking about some of these states that have these abysmal maternal rates, who also that coincides with their lack of access to Medicaid services and the like. But in New Jersey, it's a bit different, right? In New Jersey, it's one of the wealthiest states in the nation, and yet we have some of the worst birthing rates in the nation as well. Now, you're also going to hear from some people how well we're doing as of late due to certain initiatives that have been taking place on the part of the state. So I would always push back and say that check those numbers, because what you'll find is even as the state continues to improve in its birthing, in its maternal morbidity rates, the rates for Black women continue to be among the worst. That situation has not improved. So you have to ask yourself the question, if there's all these efforts being made to improve the birthing crisis in the state of New Jersey, why do Black women continue to fare worse than any other group, right?
They're not disaggregating the data, right? Like, as in, they'll talk about and ask me, is this what's going on? They get the data back, and the data says overall, women in general, the rates are better, but they don't disaggregate the data to specifically talk about Black women and how Black women specifically are faring, and they'd find they're doing just as bad, if not worse,
as before. That is correct. That is correct.
And in New Jersey, nationally, it's getting worse. New Jersey's getting better, but nationally, like when you compare the U.S. to other countries.
But I think maybe that with what was going on is that it only appears, hearing it correctly, it only appears that it's doing better in New Jersey because when they cite numbers, they're not disaggregating for Black women.
That's correct.
And overall, even if New Jersey is doing better with, quote, women overall, since the data is not disaggregated, it could be like they're doing much better for white women, but Black women are doing the same or worse.
This is correct, and this is continues to be the trend. Is that this fight for maternal wellness has been a fight led by Black women. Black women have been the dominant voices. We've been doing the work in the community, and yet as the data rolls out, what we'll see is that we continue to be left behind in benefiting from the spoils of our labor. So in the city of Trenton, we are working to establish and stand up the very first Black-led birthing center and resource hub. So we're very proud of that work.
So that's not a Trenton thing. That's something that Black women as an initiative are putting together. Can you elaborate more on that? And because that's not the state initiative, that seems like that's a salvation and social justice initiative. Can you just, because that's why I misheard before.
It's a community-led issue.
It's a community issue. That's correct. So what happened was there were a series of visioning sessions and partnerships throughout the state with Black women, Black mothers, to really establish what some of the primary needs, concerns are. And based off of that feedback, we were able to stand up an initiative to set up a Black-led birthing center in the city of Trenton. This is not a state-run initiative. This is an effort through the Greater Mount Zion CDC and Salvation and Social Justice, but it was done through the tireless efforts of Black women and advocates throughout the state. So we're very proud of that. We continue to advocate for state dollars to support the efforts, but we still have a ways to go. And we are very proud of the work that we're currently doing, providing advocacy training for the Black women in the city of Trenton. We just recently had a baby shower for several mothers in the city of Trenton, providing them with resources and gifts of various sorts to prepare them for the arrival of their babies and postpartum. So we are connected with the community and we're doing the work, but there's still a long ways to go. And we're hopeful that we're going to get to where we need and be able to service as many families as possible.
Okay. All right. And thank you. And in this ongoing conversation, and thank you for the clarification as well. Right. Like,
yeah, of course.
Because I noticed that we were talking, there was some nuance and I'm like, I think I missed something. Right. In terms of what state initiatives were versus what community initiatives were and why the state and the argument, I think that's really important. The state's still failing. They might be helping, it's good. They're helping many women. Bad in that they're not helping. They are clearly, by the data, they are not helping Black women. Right?
That's correct.
Let me ask something, Jonathan, real quick.
Sure, absolutely.
So, this is an important issue. It's been on the national radar a little bit in the past couple months. It's something really that Joe Biden needs to pick up on, and he has Kamala Harris there. It's something really she needs to pick up on and amplify as a Black woman in the highest or second highest office in the land. It's something that they need to. They're struggling with the Black community already. They're struggling in getting the support of the Black community. They don't have the support that they had in 4 years ago. So it's really something that they should really be trying to amplify.
Right. And in terms of the things that they're doing, you are also.
That's where I want this conversation to go. Keep riding.
Right. So I was going to say, clearly we're dealing with an election year coming up, right? Like, and it seems like Dr. Harris, there are many things that there's some things that you are going to be pointing out from this year that may be related to that or may impact that. What are you working on? What is it that you are thinking that we got from 2023 that we need to know about, and how will it affect us in 2024?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go
ahead. Finish. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just going to say one of the good things that's naturally happening in this conversation is that it's all piggybacking. Like each one has something to say about, that furthers the conversation overall about what we're looking at, what we need to expect.
Well, first I want to lift up Brother Ralph Pointer, who passed away on Monday. Who was a great freedom fighter, who struggled his whole life for the Black community.
Died on Christmas Day.
Died on Christmas Day. That's right.
That's right. Courageous Army of One in his 80s, strong as a bull, for the longest, loved him dearly. Put over six decades of work for the Black liberation movement.
Over 60 years.
That's right. That's right. Proud of him. Listen.
He had been on the front line for pushing for community education. He had been on the front line advocating for political prisoners, free them all now. And Ralph, he's been a consistent warrior. So I'm proud of him. I'm happy to have known him. And his work will continue to live on. But it's interesting because his work also takes us into the next year, because the issues that he worked on his whole life are still issues and things that we need to focus on. So Sister Bandele mentioned community education when she was speaking earlier. It's still an issue. It's still something that we need to take on the forefront. It connects to things I've been looking at as an Africana Studies scholar. Of course, this past year and the past few years, of course, attacks on Africana Studies in K through 12 and in higher education as well, but particularly K through 12 in terms of the AP courses out in Florida. I think that's going to continue to be an issue, particularly during an election year. That's going to continue to be an issue. Academic freedom and free speech is going to continue to be an issue. As a matter of fact, Claudine Gay, the sister that's at Harvard right now, I'm really interested to see how the Black community responds to her as she's under attack. And her job is really in jeopardy right now because Congress is really trying to push Harvard to get her out. So I'm really interested to see, well, how do we respond to that? What is our role in that? And we really have to interrogate what her role has been, what her connection has been to Black communities wherever she's been. So I think that's very important. As well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
On that issue, right? Like, has there been, like, I don't know if I've seen a lot of community pushback on her behalf, right? Like, I don't know if I've seen a large outpouring of that. we had Greg Carr on, who talked about the role of academics, and academics have to be rooted in the community. And if you're not rooted in the community, you're not going to get support from the community. That has to come first. Is there a parallel here, or are Black people just sleeping? Like, this is something.
No, I do think, and I don't want to speak too much on the sister because I don't know Claudine Gay, so I don't know her history, so I don't want to speak specifically about her. But I will say, in general, I think that that's right. You have to be connected to the community, and I think that there has been a disconnect from academics and the communities that we in general that we serve. There's not a strongest connection as there used to be. And I think that's unfortunate, of course. It doesn't benefit us. It doesn't benefit the community.
And very intentional on both sides, it looks like, unfortunately.
That's true.
But is there, like, do you think that part of the attack against her right now is in line with the attacks against affirmative action? Affirmative action is gone. Like, she's going to be very influential in what diversity in elite institutions looks like. Do you think that this is just veiled? Like, as in, we got rid of affirmative action, we need to get rid of, like, representation and people who might want a diverse class inside of elite institutions. Do you think that that is part of the same rollback?
I think that it probably is always there, but I think this is just trying to, they already got one out in terms of the Penn president. I think this is really trying to really continue to push this narrative about anti-Semitism in higher education, wokeism in higher education, the left, all these universities leaning towards the left in higher education. I think that's a part of that continuing attack coming from the right and moderates against the left. So I think they see this as an opportunity to push another person out.
To add to that, I'm sorry, finish the point, Kelly. I just wanted to add.
No, go ahead, Bob.
I mean, right here, Rutgers University. I mean, we have a Black president, right? Who, when Black teachers, Black students, Black faculty went on strike for better working conditions and wages, tried to have the state come in and deny them their right to strike and protest. Right? Exactly. Who came in with the facade of having a background in social justice.
That's right.
And turned around to be nothing but a hitman for institutional exclusivity. Right? So when I say there's a problem on both sides of that equation about Black scholars not being connected, it's what the universities want, and it's what Negro scholars are willing to be in order to get a job. We're still confined with allowing ourselves to be constrained just to have a damn job.
You're absolutely right. And what his response was very disappointing. Because he was an Africana Studies scholar as well. His work has been in that field, and you would expect that he would understand the need to be connected not only to the community but support labor. One would think he would know that. That's just like low hanging.
Rutgers started with slave labor. Come on, Black man.
It didn't make any sense. I will also say. And I'm gonna come back to this because I want to hear Sister Keesha allow her to jump in. But I will also say that there's a couple things that are happening right now that are going to be big for next year, not only for academia, of course, but for the country. I think we're really looking at a constitutional crisis right now because of the decisions in Maine and in Colorado. How the Supreme Court responds to that is really going to be a huge issue. In 2024. I also think just today, that I saw a report from Al Jazeera. Somebody shared with me a report from Al Jazeera News where South Africa has filed International Criminal Court of Justice has charged Israel with genocide of the Palestinians.
Right.
We have a former president of South Africa coming to Penn in April. So it will be very interesting how his coming to Penn and how these issues are going to surface and how we're going to have to respond to these issues. Because the South Africa discussion is one I think that we really should have.
Huge.
It's just an example of a fighting apartheid system and the Israel support of that apartheid system, and the Palestinian support of our struggle. So I think it's a great opportunity for us.
Zaid?
Yes, I mean that discussion is hugely important. That perspective is hugely important. Once upon a time, the international community around UN Resolution 242 said that Zionism was in fact a form of racism, and at the time, not only was Israel's Zionism being treated as a form of racism, but Israel was the middleman for U.S. imperialism, providing military support and technology to upholding the apartheid regime. So if anybody understands how genocidal and how apartheid policies are playing out in the Middle East, it is indeed our people in South Africa.
That's right.
And Keesha, we're bringing this to you because I think that you've had some levels of success this year in pushing the agenda, and it goes in full circle, right? It goes in what Monifa was talking about earlier in dealing with public safety and dealing with the ways in which we need to rethink the way we need to police and or not police, or the ways in which we actually make people safe. Right? How were people made safe? Talk to us about the successes that you've had this year. And because I know that, thank you for coming on, because I know that your time is always limited because there's always stuff that's going on that you are doing. So thank you for that. So what are some of the successes that you've had this year on both a local and federal level?
Thank you so much for having me tonight. So this is one of the few times that you get to see me in the house sitting on the couch. So let me go this way. And certainly thank you for always thinking and not robbery to hear what's happening in the city of Newark. Shout out to the sister in Trenton and sister Monifa and Kelly for having this conversation. So I was listening and chiming in on all the ends. Baba Zaid, good to have you here. And so we did a 2023 year in review. We had a press conference yesterday with public safety in the city of Newark. And we were ultimately looking at and talking about some of the successes. Public safety, law enforcement did a press conference, and then we as the community did one separately. And so it was the first time we did it that way. But we had the U.S. Attorney General on, and we had the State Attorney General. And we were talking about public safety from a community-based place also. And so some of the successes that we've had in Newark is that we have ultimately created community-based public safety in conjunction with law enforcement, with me being the person that goes between city government through the mayor's office. And so I am the director
of Office of Violence Prevention
for the city. In which case, it's been only 3 years that the office has been stood up, and we've been aggressively working to be able to create that community-based place, because we know that law enforcement can't do this work alone, nor do we want them to, and we want our people to have the least amount of encounters with law enforcement. So some of the successes that we've had this year so far, well, we ultimately always want to count number of homicides. Last year, we finished the year with 50, and we're still crossing our fingers and toes with the number of about 46 right now, 47, but we were at 43. And last week, we had a huge uptick where we had a homicide on a Friday, a homicide on a Saturday, a shooting on a Sunday, and a homicide on Christmas Day. And I'm like, what is going on? And so they're trying to make these connections, in which case they're personal disputes that are happening, and it's not like anything that's connected. And so what we're finding is that we are putting our strategies in place. So this year, I've been able to put out 2 rounds of RFPs for community organizations to get funded. I funded over 40 organizations at $15 million this year to be able to do trauma recovery work, therapeutic and clinical services, safe passage at the schools, inside the schools, outside the schools. They're doing the basketball games this week. victim services, youth mentoring services. I funded over 25 organizations for youth mentoring because we have an increase in youth violence. High risk intervention work where we're doing mediations, conflict resolution directly with the people who have issues. And out of that sparked my One Hood initiative, where I went into the hot spots and got all of the high ranking leaders in those areas to be able to be a part of public safety. And which is unprecedented because most times those are the people who are formerly incarcerated, the ones who can make the calls for stuff to happen or not happen, but we don't bring them to the table and include them at the table. So I gave them their own table. And so they've been helping us with public safety. And we funded domestic violence. We have an increase in domestic violence. And so I funded 5 organizations to be able to do domestic violence work in the city besides the Shani Baraka Center. And beside the Shani Baraka Center, because these domestic violence incidents spill out into gun violence incidents. We have...
Can you explain that? Like, you're saying domestic violence incidents spill out into gun violence incidents. Can you just break that down for us?
So we have incidents where if people who intimate partner or may not be intimate partner, because domestic violence is not just intimate partner, it can be anybody. It can be mother, grandmothers, sons, fathers, anybody that's within your 4 walls. But when those incidents go unresolved, they spill out into the streets, in which case people want to retaliate. If I am in a relationship with someone and the person hit me or did something to me, my brother maybe get involved, and now my brother's in the streets, now going after the person who did something to me. It started as a domestic, and now it ends up in the streets as a gun violence incident, because now my brother may have shot the person or, something of that nature.
And a question, I'm just asking about this because a lot of times we don't have this depth of conversation about the nuances of how intimate partner violence, domestic violence functions. You're saying it can go out in the streets.
How is it related?
That's common. Like, is that a common occurrence, right? Like, there are incidents in a home, there's retaliation from people outside, like, oh, you hit my sister, now you're going to die, right? Like, there are gun. Is that common? Is that a common thing?
It is a common thing. If we look at the number of homicides that we had last year, even the ones we look at this year, the data shows us that they were personal incidents. We count them as homicides and gun violence incidents because that's just the nature of how it spilled out. But we had an incident early this year where it turned out to be a murder-suicide, where the husband shot the wife and also shot himself, or shot the friend or the person that he thought she was dating. Different incidents happened. And so, yes, it's a common occurrence. Most times when you see a person shot multiple times, it's a crime of passion. And so it's the person knows the person. Nobody from across town just came and did a drive-through and randomly shot anyone. So most times they're crimes of passion, they're personal incidents, people know each other, and they spill over from the home or, within the 4 walls out into the streets. So yes, it's very common to see domestic violence incidents. We just don't have.
And of course, the forced confinement of people in those kind of relationships, unfortunately, during COVID, created an accelerator for that, right? And so there's a whole effort and struggle to try and heal from that space and bring that back down.
Right.
What?
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, what did you expect? Like, there were some things that happened federally that were directly influenced by the work that you are spearheading in Newark. And what can we look forward to in 2024, both locally and nationally, based on what you're doing? Like, one of the things that I think you could even expand on is that you actually fund individual groups who do anti-violence work. Like, you give money to various groups that do anti-violence work within the community, and how that somehow is translating federally.
So what it is as Racquel talked about, right? The models, right? It's an ecosystem. So we developed our ecosystem model where everybody has a lane. And if everybody stays in their lane and do the work in their lane, and we work collectively and collaboratively, then everyone wins. So law enforcement has a job to do. We keep them where they are. But the Board of Education has a job to do, right? Our school superintendents, the hospitals have a job to do. Our institutions have a job to do. Community-based organizations have a job to do. All of those 7 areas that I just talked about, right? So if you do victim services, I need you to stay in that lane with victim services. If you work with youth and you do mentoring programs, I need you to just stay in that lane. But people don't always know what lane they fit in. They just want to help people. And so we're helping people to know this is your lane. You do a therapeutic and clinical services. We get into the root causes of why crime and violence is happening. We're addressing it from a public health approach. And so we have the social determinants of health. And so people don't always know how to label their help. So we're helping them label it. And we're asking them to please stay in your lane, do your best work right here in this lane. We're going to fund you. And there's no need for us to fight over funding. And so if I fund you at $100,000 and I'm funding someone else at $2 million and everybody in between is eating, then there's no need for us to be fighting. And that was the issue, before, where all of us are fighting over the same pots of money and we don't need to. The Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery for the City of Newark, 5% of the police department's budget is allocated for us to do this work. But the other funding is, I have 6 grants from the state that I wrote for victims of crime. So I have 6 state grants that comes in that I utilize funding for to be able to do this work. I also have ARPA dollars, and those ARPA dollars is the ones that I'm giving back to the community. We are refunding the people, right? And so we're not incarcerating them. We're not allowing them we're not doing the language around that. We are giving the money back to the people to do the work that they need to do, because we've never had an investment before in community-based public safety. So if the police department's budget is $250 million and the community budget is 0, there's no equity there. So we have to, make sure that no matter if they do a good job or a bad job, the police budget won't be the same. But they're looking at me that if I don't cut these numbers down, if I don't show that this work works, then y'all going to cut my budget. And so that is the fight on this end, that you're not going to cut this budget over here because we're doing the work. We're first responders too. We at the hospitals. We're at the crime scenes. We're helping families. We're doing trauma work. We're healing the community. And so all of the investment for healing the community, for putting resources into the community, for getting to the root causes of why people are committing crime and violence, for addressing mental health, the outcome is a reduction in crime and violence. We're not doing crime reduction. We are doing work.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
We're not doing crime reduction work. We're doing healing work. So if we're doing healing work and we're addressing the trauma and we're addressing the root causes, all of the data tells us where the resources should go. So if we put all those resources where they should go, then you see the outcome becomes a reduction in crime and violence. We're not doing crime reduction work. We're doing healing work. We're doing trauma work, and we're helping families to be able to recover from what happened to them.
Right.
And key to that is that Newark is now at a historic low in terms of violent crime. And the low was not brought down by more police. The low was brought down by all of these peacemakers.
Right.
In our ecosystem. It was brought down without the police. At a small fraction of the resources that they get. And that definitely needs to be understood.
Right.
Everybody.
And so as a result, Jonathan, we have a state office of violence prevention and a federal office of violence prevention. So Biden and administration has created a federal office of violence prevention. There has been some hand on that from the city of Newark and other partners nationally to be able to create that office. And so now we have a city office of violence prevention, state and federal.
And so Racquel and then Monifa, I want you to comment on that as well, because I think that in the first part of what you were saying, I think you were referring to federal and larger national push, like you were talking about expanding the squad. I just want more elaboration on the national scope of this work. So Racquel?
No, I would just like to offer, Sister Keesha, she laid it out perfectly, right? What she's describing here is the importance of this community element. I think what we continue to see, despite all of our toiling to really heal our communities in a holistic way, there continues to be this narrative that these programs, these teams that are really, let's be clear, doing God's work, and they're doing it on a shoestring budget oftentimes, right? That these teams are less than, or they're not as professional. The people, the community, these community-led solutions, this is the secret sauce. It can't be co-opted, right? None of these things work without the trust, without the expertise, without the cultural competency that we see come out of these community-led organizations that are doing this work. So Sister Keesha, she laid it out perfectly. I think as we continue in our work into 2024, we want to continue to make sure that the people understand exactly what it means to be community-led. And that's what's so important in the bill that we're going to see come up for a hearing on January 4th, is that community-led means to be led by, informed by, operated by, and accountable to the community, right? There is no substitute for community-led solutions. And the successes that we're seeing in cities like Newark, in cities like Trenton, in cities like Patterson, despite all of the strife and all of the challenges, it's only possible because of the commitment, the expertise, and the competency of these community-led, directly impacted teams. So I just wanted to offer that, and I wanted to thank Keesha for all the amazing work that you're doing.
I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, Jonathan, if I did not mention the Brick City Peace Collective, I would be remiss, because the Brick City Peace Collective is the entity that allows us to coordinate, to collaborate, and hold partners accountable for the work. And what we're missing is coordination. So cities are doing great work in silos. There's no coordination. And so that's part of our secret sauce, is that we have the coordination, and we have a top-down and a bottom-up kind of a system where Mayor Baraka allows us and gives us the vision and allows access because he understands. And when you have a mayor and when you have people at the top that understand, it makes your work easier. So if I didn't have the support from the top, then it would be so much harder to do. And then if I didn't have the training and the support and relationships on the front lines, it would be harder to do. So those things make your sauce work in terms of being able to have success.
And Monifa, you were talking about in the very beginning of the show what seemed to be this, right? Like, what can you elaborate on the national perspective that you were talking about in terms of community-based programs and in dealing with public safety that you were expressing in the beginning? Because I love the conversation that's going on with different people working at different levels on these particular issues.
Yeah, I just wanted to applaud Racquel, applaud Keesha, because it is the models, right? The models, these experiments that we do on a local level make the case for the larger political demands that we've been saying, that our ancestors have been saying, that our elders have been saying. This model that we keep us safe. We are the ones that can protect ourselves. We have the solutions, whether it's the birthing solutions or it's the community safety solutions, right? They're like, we want to scale up Mary Clark. We want to scale up what Keisha's doing. It's like, this is our tradition as Black people. And I think that that shouldn't get lost. And one of the things I said earlier is that I felt like 2023 was a year of a backlash, right? It was like a backlash against like Black history, Black brilliance, Black institutions, Black leaders, Black political agendas, like anything that we were putting out there. It was like, how do we just figure out ways to discredit this? How do we figure out ways to disparage this? And it was really because it all made sense. It's because it's all revolutionary. Like everything that Keesha just laid out, when she said, you have to have the person at the top, right? The people have to put the right leader in place. The models have to be allowed to flourish. They need the resources to exist. They can't be measured by a metric that don't even apply to the institutions that you've been counting on that don't work, right? And so when we're able to kind of bring all that together, it really works. And I just want to say that way back in 2003, so this is 2 decades ago, one of our elders, Dr. Angela Davis, put out a book called Are Prisons Obsolete?
Right.
And we started saying in these hip hop concerts that we were having here in New York, we used to have these Black August hip hop concerts alongside of Free All Political Prisoners. We started saying no more prisons. And people thought we were crazy. They were just like, that's crazy. You can't have a safe community unless you are locking these people up. And you can't have, you're not going to be able to go to the store, whatever. But the brilliance, of Black people is that we understand that something happened before. Like, we existed before all of this, right? We existed before there were police and before there were prisons and before there was United States, all that, like we existed and we did something and we had models and we had creativity and brilliance. And so we just need to tap into that. And so now to see that that's a dominant conversation, to see that the Biden administration not decided there needs to be an Office of Violence Prevention, right? But had to respond to this conversation. You can't go anywhere and talk now about policing or community safety and not talk about the types of solutions and interventions that Keesha and Racquel are talking about. You can't, it doesn't matter whether you're in Portland and Austin, you go all over the country, and it's a lot of Black people, a lot of Black women, a lot of Black women and men, but also a lot of Black women who are insisting that we try different solutions because we no longer want to see our families locked up for our community's good. Like, that doesn't help our community for our families to be locked up, right? So the backlash is because of this brilliance, right? The backlash is the fear of how this was gaining traction in 2020. And now you see, like I work for a mom's organization. You saw the rise of Moms for Liberty. I don't know if the listeners have heard of them. Right. Daughters of the Confederacy 2.0, right? They're coming out to be like, all this Black history and defund the police conversations in school is making my kids scared.
How do you feel bad?
I want to, make sure that I ban these books, but, making, being anti-woke, right? And I think Erykah Badu said it. She says anti-woke is anti-Black. Like, woke is Black vernacular. So when they say they want to get rid of woke, you want to get rid of Black, right? You want to get rid of our Black thought, our consciousness.
DeSantis was loud and proud about that mess. That's right.
Right.
Florida's where wokeism comes to die. That's what that.
And they're talking about us, right? So this is a challenge on that power. And so I love the conversation. I love Dr. Harris had to say, because we think of these things and the attacks that's happening in academia as separate. The maternal health, the community safety, the attacks in academia, the ban on the books. It seemed like it's just, just crazy people popping up all up. No, this is a coordinated backlash, right? Against a new resurgence of Black consciousness that has come about. And it's a way to dismantle it and to delegitimize it, like a new brand of COINTELPRO, but even more sophisticated.
As a part of what Mumia Abu-Jamal refers to as the Great March Backwards, right? And there's a couple of things I want to add up just to add on to what they all said, and I'm supremely proud of these 3 Black women, right? Straight up. Okay, who are out in front and are lead voices on this and get stuff done, right? This kind of stuff that we're talking about, these practical expressions of the success of our work, this is what so-called defund the police looks like, right? The backlash was the demonizing of Black women as being the voice of that, and quite frankly, the language comes from a white boy named Alex Vitale, who's a good comrade and friend of ours in this work, a good colleague and scholar on this work. That's where the language comes from, but it sounds so woke-ish. It's some loud Black women and their attitudes that's the problem, and we got to put them back in their place. All of that is a part of this advance of the right wing. And that played out locally too, as because I know at some point we're going to talk about what's happening with this whole thing with Israel and Hamas, right? Because it's there, right? While we were having a modest, community-based conversation honoring the birthday of Amiri Baraka, lifting up this work and how it meant, what it means to our different communities, some reactionary, backwards Republican in the New Jersey State Legislature came after Mayor Baraka and our budget on the charge that it was being anti-Semitic.
Right.
And I said straight up, I said, them crazy. Listen. Israel needs to look at the work that we're doing in Newark to figure out how to make peace if they were interested in making peace. Right? And we need to understand also, and I'm going to raise the volume in another way on this, if we've got a right wing in this country, fully mobilized, unified, that is not interested in making peace, we have other traditions too that we need to revitalize, like our community self-defense traditions, right? I mean, and we're splicing these conversations with reference to our political prisoners, right? A very ill Sekou Odinga from the Black Panther Party. Umir Abu Jamal just had a decision that should have went his way denied by a black judge, right? Okay, we need to. This stuff is all linked up. 62 community survival programs of the Black Panther Party showing the community how to take charge and heal and take care of itself once upon a time, right? And when we came under fire, right, there was armed responses that are part of our tradition. We do have self-defense traditions, right? And young folks within the South, whoever hearing this conversation, y'all got your shotties. If you're not training up to protect your community, you're out of your African minds. You need to shift your program and be about protecting the community like we have a history of doing at this critical particular time.
And I know we're reaching our point in this conversation that we always want to further, right? We really haven't heard from you again, Dr. Kelly Harris, and then we'll end off with anybody in terms of the final words on what to expect for 2024, especially given that it may be a very unique year, right? Given that there may be a series of constitutional crises. There's an election that we have no idea what's going to happen in. There are things that may be at stake locally, regionally, right? There are people who are running for Congress that was brought up earlier. What are some of the things that we need to look forward in 2024? And then each of our guests to comment as a final thought.
Well, the election is the big thing for me. There's been people talking chatter about Trump getting more support among Black men, which is strange to me, but I'm interested to see where that goes, that discussion goes.
And anecdotally, I've heard that as well. I've heard that from Black men who support Trump, right? Or who are at least giving justifications for the supporting of Trump. I've heard Black women also, right? Like in terms of some of those numbers wavering because it seems to be like geographic. So I don't know, right? But he does seem polling to have more support across the board from Black men, Black women, from Latinos, right? He seems, at least according to certain polls, to be gaining support. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah. I think it might have some legs. But I'm also, one of the things that warms my heart is that you have Black women leading cases against him. So we can't forget that as well.
Right. All right, and then our next guest is going to be.
I'll jump in because I think my phone is going to die. I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things that I think coming this year that we're looking at is, I know that many of us have gotten ARP dollars, and that's how we're funding a lot of this work. And so I know that the dollars either, have to be used or returned this year. So I know that that is a thing that we are looking and pushing to make sure we spend these dollars. With our state office of violence prevention, we're looking to be able to bring in dollars through the state and have them trickle down locally to the city, as well as the federal dollars from the federal administration. I think there's a $5 billion investment, but there may be so many more dollars. So we're looking to be able to help our organizations to be able to sustain themselves beyond ARP dollars and to make sure that this investment stays, whether Biden leaves the administration or Trump or whoever comes into the new administration. So we're looking for sustainability for this work locally, state, and federally, and us paying attention to what's happening politically. All politics are local. And many of us say we don't do politics, but if you're not doing politics, you're not doing anything. So I want us to watch the political climate this upcoming year.
Politics will do you. That's right.
And for our last two guests also, there's always, in election years, there's always this conversation of, do we vote for the person who we don't want versus the person who we're like, oh, hell no? Or do we do third party? Like, what do we do in politics? I know we're having conversations about certain things that the Biden administration is doing at the pressing of activists. Activists are taking the forefront and lead in that. And like, can you speak to the things that we believe are important in terms of policy pushing forward on a state? Because it's always complicated, right? Like, because the state is both like the governor won with an incredible amounts of Black vote that put him over. Yeah, we're looking at maternal mortality. It seems like many women have benefited, but Black women have not, right? That we're dealing with fights for policing responsibility, and yet we have still not been able to get a citizens review board with teeth, right? So in light of the conversation about Black vote being taken for granted, many of us, like myself included, being very hesitant about Joe Biden, right? Like in terms of like just for various reasons. What is the advice that you give for the future in 2024 as well, in terms of stuff that we look forward to, stuff we should be on the lookout for, and advice on the very real conflicts that we know many in our community, especially many of the communities that we work in, right, are going to have with these questions. These questions are going to come up. What advice would you give us on it?
You want me to go first? I'm laughing because Baba Zaid and I were in a meeting last week about the rise of fascism, right? And it is very real that we are not getting our just not only what we need, but what we deserve, right? As a community here in this country and internationally. But I think people really need to pay attention to this rise of fascism, what fascism is, and not kind of conflate all bad things as being the same level, the same intensity, right? And that's not to take away from, here I am, all of us that were on the call on the front line of these really issues that are impacting life and death in our communities. And we do not want our communities to die. We don't want members of our communities to be in harm's way, but we do understand that there are worse things than what is happening now, right? We can just look and see what's happening, right? We talked about stuff going on, on the continent, in North Africa, in Southern Europe, in the areas they call the Middle East. I mean, there are worse things that are happening to us now. And I just want to really underscore that point. When you go and you vote, you have to know, don't sit on your privilege. You have to know there can be worse things for our communities based on who we vote for or whether or not we vote. But the thing I also want to understand before handing it over to my sisters is that we have to pay attention to these local elections. I think it was Keesha that said the show, right? All politics are local. And we get really caught up in the presidential race, which is important because of fascism, that is rising in this country and around the world. But also, we have to pay attention to these congressional seats. We have to pay attention to these local elections, because that is really where the rubber meets the road. We have an amazing congressman right here in New York who is going to be attacked in a primary, Jamal Bowman. You know, like when our champions get into these positions of power, we need to be able to show up and protect them and protect those seats, because they stand on business. As far as the issues and the agenda, making sure that we keep this frame of public health for public safety, we got to have people in Congress that are pushing that. And they're being picked off one by one, right? Same as the academics, by using this like anti-Semitism trope against them. Anti-Semitism is real, but anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, right? So I say, let's pay attention to the local elections. Let's pay attention to what's happening in the congressional races. And please, please don't be fooled by thinking that it's two heads of the same coin. You know, that's not to say that people should be satisfied with what's happening with the Biden administration. In fact, we're angry, we're enraged. I am too, right? But I know and I see how bad fascism can get. And I don't want to open the door to it saying, well, you know, it's hell already here.
So a lot of the conversation of, you know, and I love the phrasing, because you're like, that is what I mean. I guess you were in the meeting when people were talking about fascism, and they said it's hell already here, because that's what I hear all the time. Like I hear that phrasing, it's hell already here. Why does it matter if we vote Trump versus Biden, right? What are the practical things that we are here for? And I like the I think it's real interesting, the second thing you brought up in terms of Jamal Bowman. Is he up for he's going to get primary this year? When is it's in June?
The primary is in June. The entire New York Democratic apparatus is coming for his seat, right? He was redistricted so that he had a lot of the Bronx and then some upstate. Now he has more of, well, I don't know, Westchester. They say they're not upstate. He had more of Westchester than the Bronx. So he was already redistricted. And now a popular county executive Democrat is primarying him. And they're attacking him because he called for a ceasefire. He's amongst the first 6 members of Congress that called for a ceasefire. But amongst other things, you know, he comes out of the movement that we talked about, this reimagining public safety. You know, they're just kind of using that as the tip of the spear to attack him.
And it's interesting, because I think one thing I would just want to put out there is that because the people who are, like, generally speaking, I noticed that the charges against progressives like him of anti-Semitism come from often conservative Republicans, people who are like very conservative, potentially anti-Black, and things they've done. And I just want to put out in the forefront, a lot of the people who are fighting against what is going on in Israel are Jewish, right? There are a lot of, like, the debate about what's going on in Israel is very robust in Israel. And I just don't want people to conflate that if you are against what's going on and for a ceasefire, that means that Jewish people in general are not for a ceasefire, right? Or like because I think that to some extent the homogenization, like the charge of anti-Semitism in terms of being for a ceasefire, assumes that is something that is that out of the pale, right? Like it is like on the level of lynching, right? Like it is, but when you're like, no, these things are actually debated, and that you have entire organizations of like generational gap, younger Jewish people who are
also calling for a ceasefire.
They are not just calling for a ceasefire, they're trying to, you know, shut down different places, like as in put their bodies in front of doors to be dragged away, right? Like they are there are Jewish organizations all over that are actually doing that. So I think that to some extent it becomes probably racist white people using charges of anti-Semitism to block their own racism, right? And their own potential anti-Semitism, and that they're homogenizing this issue as in all, because if you say it's anti-Semitic, the assumption is all Jews must be against it. It is something that is fundamentally anti-Jewish, as opposed to it is an issue that is debated based on like history and a lot of other things that go on, and where Jewish people fall on multiple sides like in a large way, right? So I think that rhetorical strategy just has to be called on. And is Bowman?
Can I say this too?
Yes.
Thousands of Jews in Tel Aviv over this last week have been demonstrating against their own government, calling for a ceasefire. This is in Israel.
Right.
This is Jewish people in Tel Aviv, in Israel, also putting their bodies on the line, calling for ceasefire. So it's really, like you said, they're trying to push a narrative to make it to homogenize this Zionism. And so that anyone that stands against, the ongoing occupation and colonization of Palestine is somehow someone who discriminates against people who practice Judaism. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. And this very small call for a ceasefire that at first the 6 members of the squad, which includes Jamal Bowman, did, now has them at risk, depending on how their district looks.
Right.
Let me just add to that for a second, because and then of course Racquel, you jump in and do your thing, because I want it started with 6, it went to 48.
Yes.
Right. That my last count, and I don't count that good, right? So it's probably more, right? 48 congresspersons who came out calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, right? AIPAC is going after all 48, and they're being very loud about that. And locally, what is it? That means our own congresswoman here in the Trenton area, right? Mother Bessie was in that mix, very unapologetically too, right? So so that means something. We got a really big picture of this particular moment, right? And not just get stuck on Biden and his unwillingness to do everything that we want.
Racquel?
What can I offer that hasn't already been said? I mean, Baba Zaid and Sister Monifa, y'all nailed it. What I will offer is this: as we're going into this next election cycle, we often hear people say, how our leaders, our ancestors, Martin, they died for the right to vote. And I always push back on that, because I always say they didn't just die for the right to vote. They died for you to vote intelligently, right? So I guess what I would caution everybody to do is to do the knowledge, do the homework, right? And remember that politics is it's a transactional engagement, right? So we're not going to have candidates playing in our face and using our spaces to leverage their own political agenda. Anytime they meet with us, anytime they see us, anytime they call on our leaders, we must make sure our leaders have an agenda in tow. And they have to speak to it. Otherwise, they don't get the vote. So I would encourage all of our members of the community to make sure that they're informed. They're not just voting blindly, but that they're informed voters. And then they come with not only the receipts, but an agenda as well to advance the work. So that's what I would offer going into this next election cycle, is to be informed, engaged, and if you don't have the answers, then seek the answers. But we no longer have an excuse to be lazy, and also lawmakers no longer have an excuse to be cowardice. A lot of what we heard up until this point was that we have to tread lightly because of this fear of
So New Jersey.
Yep. And that's no longer the case, right? We see that this red wave never came, and now now they have to deliver on some of those promises that have long since been made and fallen short. So I would encourage people to remember that very point, that we're here to collect.
And Jonathan, as we transition, several things, just to pull some things together. One, what Professor Kelly Harris talked about in terms of this constitutional issue, right? That clause in the 14th Amendment, if you have participated in an insurrection against the government, you are not supposed to be allowed to run for office. And Donald Trump has yet to be fully held accountable for what he did, no matter how blatant the evidence is that he, in fact, had been insurrectionist. Right? But that is going to be a critical linchpin in how that goes. We need to pay attention to the 14th Amendment that had a lot to do in its inception with the freedom of our ancestors and their first taste of some small, short-lived notion of civil liberties. 2, dare to win. We even though we just barely beat their behinds in 2020, if we dare to really big picture this and unite the way we should against fascism, the way our Panther elders tried to tell us to do that back in 1969, we win. We got other things to look for. We should be growing progressive squads, right? And on the question of our work around bringing peace and healing into our community, our daughter out in the St. Louis Ferguson area, Corey Bush, pay attention to her People's Response Act. It brings all of this healing work that we're talking about together on the federal level. And it's a conversation we need to push as soon as we dare to win.
All right. And yes.
I just want to add a quote by my organization's namesake, Malcolm X. From the Malcolm.
You got 2 Malcolm organizations here. Right on, baby. Come on.
When asked about Black people and what they should be doing in the election that was coming up, you know, Lyndon B. Johnson running, and he gave a very populist, iconic speech. It's called "It's Got to Be the Ballot of the Bullet," and basically he's saying, go to the polls, right? Understand this political apparatus and take part. And he says, we must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce, right? So what Racquel said, be intelligent about it, right? We must know what part politics play in our lives, right? It's not a silver bullet.
That's right.
But it's a tool in the toolbox to build power. And we can't leave anything in the toolbox, on the table, on the field. We can't leave anything, right? We have to use everything that's there. And so we can just look back to Malcolm X, I feel, to answer the question. We got to get engaged. We have to be intelligent. You know, we cannot let fascism rise. It's exhausting. It seems like Black people always saving the planet from doom. Right?
And we barely staying alive. Now, to her point, it'll be the ballot or the bullet. It'll be liberty, it'll be death. It'll be freedom for everybody, or it'll be freedom for nobody. What she is quoting, April 12th, 1964, Detroit, Michigan. The 60th anniversary is coming up in a few months, so we need to be turning the volume way up in defense of the ballot. That too has an armed tradition, by the way.
And I just want to say, when you listen, all the viewers, I would encourage you, when you get off of this, to listen to that speech. It's as if it was written today. It's still that relevant. I take that for what it's worth, but it's all laid out there. It's all laid out there. So thank you for lifting that up, Monifa, because it was brilliantly put back in 1960 something, and here we are.
I just want to bring up, I'm a debate coach. I'm a high school debate coach. And one of the things that actually is getting debated all over, one of the arguments that comes up often, very specifically, is that Black women should not participate in politics because working with the federal government, working in politics has been bad traditionally, historically, right? And that it always brings about failure. Like we've gone from slavery to Jim Crow to the prison industrial complex. And they will argue, right, that engaging in the political process is bad for Black women because it is exhausting, right? And not only is it exhausting, but it is exhausting and the rewards from it won't be seen, right? Because we have all of these horrible results that come from that. And again, when we're talking about young people and we're talking about high school, college, and these are arguments that get argued not just locally, but like nationally, right? Given the work that you do and the perspectives that you have, what are some thoughts that you'd give to that?
I'll take a stab at it first. I think I understand the argument. My 18-year-old self would have made that same argument, right? However, it's not a matter of not engaging with the government. It's about engaging with the government with intention, right? The goal cannot just to be invited to the party. The goal you have to have some intention in your engagement, because outside of that, that's when we get eaten up. That's when we get lost. That's when the mission gets derailed. So I would always encourage people, especially Black women, and quite honestly, Black women must engage, because quite frankly, we have the most to lose, right? It is our babies that get lost to the system. It is our sons and our husbands that get lost. It's our sisters and ourselves who are dying at the tables, on birthing tables. So we can't afford not to engage, but our engagement doesn't stop. Our work doesn't stop with engaging with these institutions. Our work continues, and our work is informed by what we're doing in the community, right? And again, it goes back to this message about community-led solutions, right? We no longer want to just be invited to the table. When we come with our own recipe, right? We're coming with our own chefs. We're coming with our own ingredients, and there's an expectation that all of that be incorporated in the solutions that roll out in our communities. And I think we're seeing more of that, is that Black women are showing up in these spaces with that intention.
And Jonathan, and salute to these incredible women, right? The summer, the protest summer, the George Floyd summer that was 2020, was overwhelmingly led by young Black and brown women. And that line that you raised in your question is some spooky backwards baggage of sexism that Black men also need to hear in check and kick that out of our conversation, because it's backwards as hell. Backwards as hell. And we need to say that unapologetically in defense of our mothers, daughters, aunties, queens, all of them, right? That's some backwards ass bullshit that we need to check, especially at a time like this.
I want to add what Racquel, because the intention is how we make everything that we do political activism, right? So like Black women's political activism is asymmetrical, right? It's not set up in the way that men are active or that white people are active. You know, when you look at what made the Black Panther Party so amazing, which also was majority women, right, is that they said, you know what, free breakfast program, feeding children in our community is political activism, right? People don't think of that as being political activism.
You couldn't have a chapter if you couldn't do it.
What'd you say?
You couldn't have a chapter in your city if you couldn't feed them babies. Don't care who the macho man leader was. Didn't matter. You got to produce and take care of our people.
And so I actually see Black women every day engaging in politics, being politically active, even though that's not what they would call it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the doula collective in my community, that's political activism. They engage in politics. Chanel Portia with Ancient Song Doula Network. You know, like these ways that we push back and build power and destroy systems that are harming us in ways that we understand, that are intentional, intuitive to us, the way that our grandmothers did it or the way that our mothers did it. That is our activism. And it looks very different. And that's why we're able to continue to push forward even in the backlash, because it's not this symmetrical, linear way that people see community engaging in politics. So we're in there all kinds of ways. You know, one of the tactics of Harriet Tubman's crew, right, was to send spies back down into the Confederacy just to be in the kitchen.
Told you we had our own tradition. Come on now.
And get that information. You know, that's the brilliance of how we engage in politics. So it's not always running for office or leading a nonprofit or being in a congressional office. That's not for everyone, right? But maybe you drive a bus, right? And maybe you drive kids to school and you are doing things and you are engaging in the community to make sure it is what it's meeting the needs of those families that need their kids to get to school. And that's just as important. You know what I'm saying? So we understand it. And if that intention is there, if you're like, I'm doing this to build power for Black people. I don't care if you're making breakfast or you are working in a congressional office or you're knocking on doors to canvass for voters, right? It's all engaging in politics.
Because it seems like it's all dealing with the structure. It's not about the individual. You are still dealing with and undermining a structure of power. You're dealing with racial capitalism. Even if you are doing a free breakfast program, you are making a statement against racial capitalism, right? Like functionally, because you are giving free
in real time, in a way that the mom who brings her kid to the breakfast program understands. It's like, oh, I get it. So when you guys are in the study session talking about capitalism and communalism, it's all on paper. But the fact that these sisters feed my kid in the morning, oh, I get it. That's what you're talking about, right? So it makes it real, and it shows that everybody can play a role, because whatever it is that you do, I think Keesha was talking about what's your lane, people staying in their lane. One of the most powerful incidents of 2020 for me here in Brooklyn was when the bus drivers refused to drive the protesters who were arrested to prison, right? They were arresting us in such great numbers that they needed to commandeer MTA buses in Brooklyn and in Oakland and in Minneapolis, all these places. And it was the Transit Workers Association that sent out a tweet to their members, and they suddenly stepped off the buses. Now, what can't the police do? They can't drive a city bus, right? And so now all these protesters had to be let go. These bus drivers played a role on that day. In their lane, they exhibited power, like real, tangible political power. And they weren't even in
a very feminine way. That's the feminine principle of withdrawal. Be clear on that too.
Just withdraw your work.
That's right.
So there's all these ways. Yes, it's exhausting. Yes, I understand what you're saying, but I also understand that I have aunties and grandmas in my community that I consider them engaging in politics. They may not call it that, but they are. It's subversive. You know what I'm saying? They are deconstructing the existing power structures, and they show everyday little models that we know. I was like, wow, if we scaled that up, then these harms that are happening over here wouldn't happen anymore. She's doing it just for that house, but we could scale it up, and it could be community-wide. It could be citywide.
Thank you so much.
And also, I'll just add too, remembering that the place that Black women work from is always preservation and the sustenance of life, right? And whatever you lead from that space, something beautiful is going to be born. So, just keeping that in mind too, that when you see Black women in these spaces, the core principle that we're leading with is that preservation and the sustenance, sustaining that life. And I think that's what informs so much of what it is that we do and why it's so necessary that we be in these spaces, however we can fit in.
And any Black man that ain't with that is out of his goddamn mind.
Straight up.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much, right? Like for this. And we need to have you back on more to have more of these continuing conversations. Haven't seen enough of you in 2023. Needed to see, hopefully we will see a lot more of you in 2024. Favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group?
I'll go first. Lately I've been feeling Tupac. I think Tupac is one of them so far. Last time I was on the show, I think I gave some classics, but today I'm going to say Tupac.
Okay. And Monifa?
I recently saw Lauren. She did a great job. But what I'm going to say today, because I've been feeling, is just old Black Star and Dead Prez.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jack slapping hip hop. Right on.
And having you on a lot more in 2024.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you back. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Where our next folks at? Right? There go Maati. Did Kyle ever get on? Where's Khasekhmwy?
He was here.
Okay.
All right.
Our young man is back. The young prince. I see him.
Hey,
good to see you, son.
So
happy holiday.
Happy holiday to you too. So Zaid.
Yes, sir.
Maati and
Maati, you've been on before, right? Have you been on before? You muted, but you muted, Queen.
Yes, I have been on.
You have.
Greetings, everyone.
Right. In the background, when she was on before, Maati has done some important groundwork on the state front, on this police accountability piece, moving an important film that is quietly getting community traction called Reimagining Safety, which speaks to this very question that the sisters were just talking about, right? So I want to shout her out for that. Now, she's here today because tomorrow, right, she is also breathing Kwanzaa into her community of Trenton, right, in conjunction with Racquel's organization, Salvation and Social Justice. And I wanted to have a few words on what she's doing tomorrow.
Okay, so tomorrow we're observing Kwanzaa, the fifth day, and we plan to do it with Salvation and Social Justice at the Greater Mount Zion AME Church that is on Pennington Avenue in Trenton, New Jersey. And, for us here in Trenton, there is a void of organizations that recognize, our African tradition and African heritage. And the Trenton Anti-Violence Coalition and the work that we do is always about Black liberation and Black culture and Black traditions and Black heritage. So, we're going to do Kwanzaa tomorrow with Salvation and Social Justice. And Baba, you're going to be the master ceremony. Over the years, we've done a whole bunch of Kwanzaa events down here in Trenton. And I'm looking forward to it because we haven't had you, officiate our Kwanzaa in a few years. And it's about time.
So who else are you having on your program? Okay. You got some other folks come. You got drummers, and you got a Kwanzaa program looking like a Kwanzaa program.
I have Queen Mother
Newark's own Queen Mother Maku, who's coming down and blessing us with her musical talents and her cultural prowess. She's going to do the presentation of the African drum, and provide the beat, the heartbeat of the program tomorrow. Queen Mother Maku.
Right?
Yes, you have some spoken word artists too, don't you? I'm sorry, I was muted.
We have two spoken word artists.
Sister Marcia and Brother Shaq, who are going to come and lend their lyrical abilities to the program. So we have spoken word artists. We'll do the presentation and the ceremony, and I'm excited about it.
Remember, whenever you're not speaking, make sure you put yourself on mute, because if you don't,
it'll have the echo. Is that what's happening? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, Zaid.
And that church is a church of none other than where Reverend Charles Boyer is the pastor, right? Charles Boyer, who was the the visionary leader of Salvation and Social Justice, and is one of the lead Black clergy voices in the state of New Jersey in recent years. I'm very proud of that little brother from my hometown of Plainfield too, by the way, I got to say.
All right. So Zaid, do you have more questions? Because this is seems like a great program that is coming up. To tell us questions about it, and also tell us where, when, and what to expect.
Go ahead, then, Maati. You should answer the where, the specifics, the logistics, the where and the when.
It's at Greater Mount Zion AME Church. That is the home base for Salvation and Social Justice. Pastor Boyer, we had talked about this last year, and when we made it come into fruition. So it's at 42 Pennington Avenue. That's in the North Ward in Trenton, New Jersey.
It's about a 5-minute ride from the train station, and we'll be there from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
All right, thank you. Zai, do you want to have anything to add?
I mean, it's self-explanatory, and this is indeed Kwanzaa season. One thing I want to say is also too is that just as hip hop is in its 50th year, Kwanzaa is in its 57th year, and it still has a long way to grow, right? Maati, you didn't know this, but I was also trying to get to today is Ujamaa, right? Cooperative economics, something that we have not been good at since the advent of Kwanzaa, right? Unfortunately, and it's a kind of consciousness that we definitely need to bring back. We were originally going to have on locally our own brother Khasekhmwy from Rafeeza, and he was on. I don't know what happened to Kha. I haven't been able to reach him. Something must have come up because Kha has been, that kind of advocate and that kind of voice in a very lone way for a while on that front. Now, some younger people are trying to figure that out, and Mayor Barack has tried to help them in ecosystem in that way too. I just got turned on to some young folks who I didn't know, who are trying to develop that mindset. We were supposed to also have Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. Who was Dr. Tiffany Crutcher? She is the twin sister of Terrence Crutcher, who was Tulsa, Oklahoma's Hands Up, Don't Shoot in 2016. This sister, who's a medical professional based in Alabama at the time, came back to Tulsa, the land of Black Wall Street, and built out a foundation, the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, that has all of the trappings of the very ecosystem that we have tried to put together here in Newark. But it went a step further. There's a huge mall in that Black community that was underdeveloped, right, and unoccupied, called North Point. The foundation, through her leadership and vision, just purchased that. Doing some economic revitalization work on this 501c3 front, right, in the spirit of the ancestors of Black Wall Street. That's cooperative economics in a real way that we need to really, we really need to be replicating in all those spaces where we have some semblance of control or concentration of our people and the will to do that, right? So for the principle for today, Baragani. It's Ujamaa Habarigani, right? And we need to really just take a minute and put a pin in that. So I look forward to having them back on because they're both important voices and important examples of embodying what that means. And I'm very proud of both of them. And I regret that we couldn't get them on tonight.
All right, so thank you, and looking forward to. I know that. Looking forward to the program and also having you back on the program. Is there favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group?
That's for you, Maati.
Okay. I'll say my favorite hip hop artist is Nas, right? And right now, what I'm listening to is a group called Brothers Keeper. They're on YouTube. They got about 40 songs, and all of their music is conscious. Specifically, the song "The Sermon." The Sermon is how I discovered them. I think I saw them perform in New York, and I've been following them ever since. So that's what I'm listening to now. But if I had to say I had a favorite rap artist, it would be Nas.
Okay, thank you.
Rhino, you up on them?
I think I heard of them before. Yeah,
I haven't.
Yeah, you gotta check them out, Baba. They really hot.
Go ahead, Maati.
Brothers Keeper. Brother with an A.
Maati ended it with a mic dropper. Come on, Queen. We see you.
All right. And thank you. And we definitely have to have you back on the show as well.
Thank you.
And very much appreciate it. So transitioning to DJ Rhino. What's up, man? And by the way, welcome. Goke. artist Goke, frequent guest on this section, on the segment, like on hip hop 2023 to 2024. What's going on in 2023 and what's up with 2024?
You want me to go first or Rhino?
Either. Goke, if you want to jump in.
Go ahead, man.
More than welcome.
So yeah, this year has been really good in terms of just music transition and learning about the art. I've been focused a lot more on the video aspect of it, the visual aspect of music. So that's been extremely interesting for me to dive into, not just for myself, but also for other musicians I know as well. So that's just been really fun working on videos, creating that. And I should have some more videos coming out soon. And then, also just taking time to listen to other people's music as well. I've learned a lot more about some more local artists, as well as other people that I want to collab to internationally, but I've been focused a lot more on trying to get more collaborations with like Newark artists. So that's been really interesting because there's just like a lot of talent here, both in Newark and then just New Jersey, and then I guess the tri-state area as well. So that's been 2023. And then 2024, I'm working on my next Afrobeats project. The last one was like a major hit with a lot of people. So a lot of people requested that be the next project that I work on. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing for 2024, working on that. So you could be expecting another Afrobeats full album.
Have you been looking at like a lot of times when you are in a space like Newark and you have so many different cultural influences, new stuff is created. Can we expect some stuff that we have just not heard before?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my music, I struggle to put it into genres and categories. You obviously have to, just for like upload reasons as well as like discoverability. People tend to like search by genres and like categories, but a lot of my music fits under like experimental music, which is a category in and of itself as well. But most people don't just go to experimental because you don't know what to expect. So I try to label it as closely to the genre as it is. So even like my this Afrobeats project that I'm working on, it's gonna be like Afrobeats, but obviously, like you said, I came up in Newark, like I grew up here. I've lived here most of my life. So as a result, all of those cultural influences, from
like
the North,
rooted in hip hop, like from the time I've known you, when I first met you, you were trying to rap, you were trying to rhymes, and like there are all these different cultural influences that play. And so continue what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. There's all those other cultural influences. So and though I say Afrobeats, I spent most of my life here in America. So even just that interpretation of like what is Afrobeats or like what is African music changes greatly based on like what part of Africa you're in, or like even what part of Nigeria. And so yeah, people can expect to hear a lot of those cultural influences inside of that music as well, especially in context of like Newark, New Jersey. But yeah, it's going to be something new. It's going to be something creative. A lot of it is completely inventive in terms of just like the control of the instruments and the sounds. Everything is engineered down to like almost like a science. So a lot of it is just, and the reason for that is because it's so experimental, right? Like a lot of times just trying to like make that idea real is very, it takes time. It takes time.
All right. Thank you, man. Rhino, 2023, 2024, what is it that passed, that significance? And what is it that we look forward to? Hey, Donna.
Peace, Donna. I mean, me, I'm from a little bit of an older generation. So this past year has been a lot of celebrating 50 years of hip hop. There's been a lot of mixed feelings and mixed, views on whether it's really 50 years and what are we celebrating, this, that, and the other. Especially now with the Grammy performance that we just saw recently, there's been a lot of speculation on that. Again, I said last week, I enjoyed everything that I saw, but I also understood and agreed with KRS-One, when we talk about the culture. When we talk about the culture of hip hop, it's bigger than just rapping. It's not just rapping. Rapping was actually one of the last element of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Of the culture of hip hop. It was one of the last elements. You know what I'm saying? The first element would be graffiti. And a lot of people don't even talk about this, but I would say, you know, when you're talking about culture and nature and also dealing, you know, trying to survive in poverty, you know, I would say beatboxing would be the next, because if you don't have any music, you can't afford music. What you're going to do, you can't afford a radio, you can't afford equipment, you're going to make music with your mouth. It's just like the doo-wop days when you know, bo bo do bo bo, good night sweetheart, you know, that's somebody trying to do a bass
before
line.
that in
Yeah,
jazz.
that's a bass line for with their mouth, you know what I'm saying? So it's about doing music with your mouth when you don't have the instruments. And so I would put beatboxing after graffiti, and then comes the DJ, because once you do get your hands on some equipment, you're going to throw a party and you're going to throw those breakdowns on. And so then after DJing would come the breakdancer, because they're dancing to the breakdowns that the DJ's playing. And then when you have a whole party situation going on, you need somebody to control the party and keep it going and keep it right. And that's where the rapper comes in. That's where the MC, the master of ceremony, comes in. So, you know, that's the culture of hip hop. But what we've been seeing a lot is the celebration of the rap part, and that's a very small and late part of the culture. And so for 2024, I would just like to see more celebration and more tributes to those other elements. You know what I'm saying? You know, we gave hip hop, I mean, we gave rap music a nice run for the 50th this year. You know, it kept me busy as a DJ. But I definitely, you know, I definitely would like to see more more light shed on the other elements, because those are also elements that, you know, our youth and our people can still thrive on. You know what I'm saying? Because they've been untouched, because they've been kind of like, you know, hidden and pushed to the side. Those things can be thrived on. You know what I'm saying? And I think we need to get people involved and get people just more engaged in those other elements. You know what I mean? Besides just the rap. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, again, big ups to Andre 3000 for showing that it ain't just about rap. You know what I mean? You know, that's where my head is right now. And
Well,
Goke, I definitely need a copy of that that Afro Beats, man. I need that. As a DJ, I'm gonna need that, man.
Definitely, I got you.
Word.
I was getting ready to say, when you're talking about the other aspects of hip hop, in 2024 at the Olympics, breakdancing going to be a sport.
Yeah.
That's going to be probably won by some little white French kid. Right? Like,
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of European kids, European and Asian. It's gonna be a lot of that in there.
Right. The gold medal for breakdancing in the Olympics goes to Singapore, and it's France, and in
and let us not forget in 1223 I believe that was the VMAs that was held in Newark, New Jersey, announced the first Afrobeats Award.
1223. I wasn't there.
That was downtown Newark.
I'm messing with you. I know you better say 2023.
In 2023. Yeah, I'm sorry.
1223. I don't want to be nowhere near this place.
Yeah, but I hear him say, Goke, are you saying Afrobeats is experimental music, or are you saying Afrobeats and experimental music?
So even the term Afrobeats, the way it was coined and came into existence, it has kind of like a complicated history, right? So like a lot of like African music varies depending on what part of Africa you're in, right? So like, and then even within the parts, there's like variations of the type of music they do, down to like the dancing, right? The cadence, the music, even the instruments they use. A lot of the instruments they use came down to like access to materials and just like what they knew, the sounds they were able to create with their own mouths and like the things that were around them. So like music varies by region, but once like African music started getting popular, people wanted ways to like I said, fit into a category. So it's like easier to search for like people to like look up, to consume like new forms of it. The term Afrobeat, I forgot who was the first person who said it, like Afrobeats or Afrobeats with an S, eventually became the name to just categorize all of African music. So I say my music is Afrobeats, but it's really just experimental in the way in which I'm trying to mix my Yoruba Nigerian heritage with my American life here.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And we have reached 9 o'clock, and we are out of time for this part. However,
Goke should give his links to his work.
Music.
Yeah, I could do that. You want me to
give it and put it in the comments as well?
Yeah, type it in the chat. Yeah.
Yep.
Also, I just want to say real quick, the group Little Brother out of North Carolina. If anybody knows about Little Brother, they have a documentary on that you can find free on YouTube right now. It's called May the Lord Watch. May the Lord Watch, and it's basically the story of the group, the hip hop group Little Brother, coming out of North Carolina. They're from Durham, North Carolina. But they've been around for some time now, and they're kind of on the same wave of Ninth Wonder, who was one of their producers at the time. They're on the wave of Ninth Wonder, Slum Village, Native Tongues kind of vibe. You know what I'm saying? But they've been around for some years, man, and they had some bangers, man. But as a lot of groups in hip hop, man, they had a lot of ups and downs within the group and within the industry. But definitely check out May the Lord Watch. It's a story about Little Brother, and it's on YouTube. You can watch it for free right now. Check it out. It's real good, man. These brothers they're good people. I'm talking about Big Pooh and Fonte. Fonte's done work with Foreign Exchange, a group called Foreign Exchange. He's done a lot of work, man. He's a super lyricist. You know what I'm saying? But definitely check out May the Lord Watch on YouTube.
The thing I love about album music and the streaming services is that you get exposed to people that you might not have gotten exposed to before. And Fonte is someone who keeps coming up. Because I listen, I'm like, whoa. And then it was like Foreign Exchange. I'm like, yeah, he does a lot, right?
Yeah, so, he's been around for a minute, man. I remember when they first came out with the Minstrel Show. That was the name of their debut album, and the whole album was just a banger.
Cool. So, anything to add, man? Like, because I know that this is DJ Rhino. This is the State of Hip Hop, and we are looking at the last Friday of the year. So, Rhino.
Yeah, that's it for me, man. Like I said, man, let's show a little more love to the culture. You know what I'm saying? And that's it, man. Let's move forward, man, and keep it strong, keep it positive. And tomorrow, again, of course, tomorrow I'm going to be on twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ, 3 p.m. for the Saturday Shake Up.
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that?
Twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ, Saturday Shake Up on Twitch. Every Saturday I'm on there and I'm throwing music. Sometimes I do concepts and topics and stuff. Sometimes I just go in and jam, you know what I mean? So check me out tomorrow on Twitch.
Okay, cool, man. And one thing for next year, and maybe you agree with me on this, we're all going to root and hope that at least one or two African Americans make it on the Olympic breakdancing team. It's not just white American.
Yeah, man, we gotta see some darker faces, right? We need to see that, man.
Right.
I you know what's funny? I said that recently about DJs, man, because a lot of DJs, we see a lot of European and Asian DJs, man. You don't see a lot of brothers, you know, I'm talking about turntablism, like doing tricks and stuff like that, man. You don't see a lot of the brothers, man, the darker tones doing that, man. But when you see it, man, it's a beautiful thing, man. It's like, wow, where you been at, you know?
So Don, I'm gonna give you the last word for tonight. Hey, great seeing you.
Well, I just want to wish everybody a blessed end of the year, and that we have a prosperous 2024, and just wait to see what's going to come. Where all politics are local. We have new information, new ideas, and new people to show you, and there's a lot of information. But as always, please be engaged in your community, get out and vote, and know what the issues are.
Well, thank you very much. Thank all of our guests. We had so many guests. It was funny. A day ago, we're like, we're gonna get on tomorrow, right? And today we just like an all-star panel, just a great guest from beginning to end. Thank you everyone for showing up. It was. We were filled 3 hours because this is the fifth Friday. The fifth Friday, we don't have any of our particular shows, right? We have a congressman the first Friday. We have the vote the second Friday. We have like a series of activists. We have on the third one, we have the Mayor Ras Baraka comes on, and the fourth one we have the disciples. We have the clergy who come on. So we have set shows 4 times a week. 4 times a month. This is the fifth Friday, so we had to fill up 3 hours and a short amount. Thank you, Zaid, for all of that production work. Goke, thank you. At the last minute to make it work. Wishing everybody a happy New Year's. Celebrate the holidays. Be fit. Be safe. Be safe. So for everyone. Shout out to Myrna Morales. Thank you for showing up on the show as well, and for agreeing to help out and find really good people who are doing things around the country in terms of activist work in cities, and adding that local perspective of politics that we all need. So thank you again, and be safe. Next week.
Peace. Next year.
January 1, Imani. Revolutionary Day.
Next year.
Faith.
That's right.
Faith.
Peace.